Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Largest Husker lead at 13. Off the head of Sanford. Well, this counts for numbers. Williams makes it a 15-point lead. Williams, big step for three. A big step and then a big shot to give us overtime. Trey Norman, 10 on the timer.
Really good half-court defense.
Contested 3 and 1! A chance at a 4-point play! They got it right the first time. And picked off. Flag on the attack. It's the slam! And a foul! Oh, my! Rejected by Sarver!
2 blocks a game, the average.
Double. Joplin hit! Got it! And one! Malik Mack has to work to get it across with 21 on the timer.
There you see Marquette really picking it up. Here we go.
Ross with the fury.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. What is up, DB?
What's going on?
Oh, just hanging out here.
Just hanging out.
It's Wednesday, a little hump day.
Is that what today is already?
It is Wednesday already.
Man, it's happened fast.
The last couple weeks have been very strange days-wise. Yeah, I'm a little lost on where we are, but I'm almost certain we're on a Wednesday today.
Yeah, I guess we'll go with Wednesday.
Had a big night of college hoops last night.
We did. Well, yeah.
It was.
I saw some extremely questionable officiating.
Yes, that's accurate.
But it's not the game you think.
Not Nebraska, Iowa.
It's not Nebraska, Iowa.
Although that wasn't great either.
Yeah, wow.
We'll get to that.
Auburn, Texas had a lot of issues.
A little iffy?
Yeah.
Not feeling great about that one?
Lot of issues.
Auburn snuck on by?
Not really. I mean, they blew a 19-point lead.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it got kind of hectic late. Couple technicals, couple flagrants. Guys going to the free throw line. And then Michigan, UCLA was not. So I'm just going to say this about Peacock.
Okay.
I don't mind streaming services, hopping in the game, doing their thing, right? I mean, you do you. Like, we'll figure out how to consume the product. I'm going to tell you the worst thing about Peacock.
What's that?
It's whatever you call, is it the platform or the mechanism or whatever it is that allows you to rewind and fast forward.
Okay, yeah.
It's not good.
That is accurate.
It is. And I've only had to do it once, and I believe it was Nebraska-Purdue football.
I believe that's right.
That it's kind of sticking in my craw. But I missed the first half of basketball last night being at Big Red Wrap-Up.
Mm-hmm.
So Vers and I are listening to the whole thing in the car on the way back to Omaha. And obviously listening to Jake and KP. And I said, I'm not gonna get in the emotions. I'm gonna watch and then pit it against what I was hearing real time.
Mm-hmm.
Because KP can get into the officials a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
Jake typically not as much.
He was yesterday, though.
He was uncharacteristically upset last night. So I was like, let me go back.
Yeah.
And watch it all. But the rewinding and fast forwarding mechanism is miserable.
Yeah, it's not any good
on the cock.
It's not even good on their programming. Like, it's not just the live streaming stuff. It's the entire platform is not good at navigating.
It's a problem.
But yeah, Jake was heated last night.
Yeah, it was, and so I'm kind of it was not. They let him play.
They
let him play.
Is a couple things can be true at the same time, right? The officiating was very bad.
Yeah.
The double dribble in particular is just, I don't even know what you do there. Like, I don't know how Fred Hoiberg stayed in that game.
It's kind of made up.
I have no idea, right? Like, if I'm Fred Hoiberg in that situation, I blow my top. and I am not, there's no way I'm being allowed to continue in that basketball game, right? I understand that. It's egregious, and in that spot especially, horrifying missed call. Two things can be true at once, though. Nebraska also had a 15-point lead with that officiating.
Yeah.
And the officiating didn't let Sanford go off for 30 in the second half.
Yeah, I wish I could say I had not seen that before. He's done that for a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
and you know the funny thing is, I thought his little brother, and I don't think so, but I thought Price was going to be the better of the two.
Really?
Yeah. I've seen Peyton 10 times. Price played with ETG his last year in the shoe league, and we played against him for years.
Yeah.
He's out at the showcase in Missouri and sat with his parents. And of course, my affinity for Josh Dix. That number one, that's the guy that you couldn't let.
Well, he kept him in the first half.
He sure did.
Yeah.
And so I felt like there were a couple key things that happened that were kind of overlooking. Nebraska's inability to rebound the basketball defensively on a couple of second and third chance points. Two of them led to threes. One of them was the corner one that Price hit, which I think it made it 62-61.
Yeah, that was in a really big spot. That was
because Nebraska had just kind of quailed the momentum a little bit. Bryce got fouled. He made both his free throws. I was like, okay. They pushed it back to 4.
Got him at arm's length a little bit.
I'm like, okay, kind of settled down. And Price hit the 3. They went into the break, and then it was hectic after that. And I get it, right? Iowa was chipping away at the time, but Nebraska was missing free throws too. So when Bryce hit the 2 free throws, I was like, oh, okay, they'll kind of settle this thing down. But I watch Peyton a ton, and he was pretty frustrated the other night. He didn't play well. Got in foul trouble. He kind of went to the bench, had a few expletives, and I get it because that's just kind of how he is. But I'm not gonna sit here and tell you he can't score. I mean, the guy goes for 20 a night in a big boy conference.
Oh, 100%.
For a reason.
100%.
You just can't let him get it in a half.
Yeah, you can't let him go for 30 and a half, right?
So
I mean,
it's so hard. It's so hard on those tip out threes.
It is
because guys scramble, but there were like these 2 or 3 stretches where Nebraska just wouldn't get back.
They wouldn't get back, or they wouldn't get, like, they'd lose them in the scramble, right? Which is you cannot do, especially when a guy's hot. And then there were some where they just weren't getting out far enough.
I know.
Like you just got to get out further.
Yeah, you'd close out at 19 and you need to get to 22.
Yeah, like especially after guys hit a couple, like you just got to keep going.
Yeah, and he had a couple heat checks too where he's going to let you know.
He did.
He's going to shoot that thing.
But between him and Dix, they go 13 for 20 from 3.
Yeah.
That's not an officiating problem.
Nope.
That's a Nebraska problem. And listen, I get that they both can score, but it's not like Peyton was shooting 50% from 3 coming into this game.
I felt like Josh's ability to keep balls alive and his rebounding was kind of critical too.
He was really good last night, especially in the first half when he was scoring, but he did a lot of those little things in the second half as well. But you mentioned a couple of things there. Obviously, the shooting from Dix and Sanford killed Nebraska, especially Sanford in the second half. But the 12 for 22 from the free throw line.
I know. And when Iowa was chipping away, so they cut the 15-point lead in like 7 minutes, I think, of game time. And I think during that stretch, Nebraska was 1 of 7 from the foul line.
Yeah, they were really, really bad from the free throw line.
And it's a good free throw shooting team.
Yeah, it was an aberration for them.
Didn't you not think when Hoiberg hit the shot that you're like, oh, okay, Nebraska's going to settle this down?
I did. I thought a couple times they were going to settle it down. I really did.
And then it was like, I felt like going into overtime, and Nebraska was lucky to get it there.
100%. I mean, they were lucky to get it there because you have to hit a buzzer beater to get there, right? But you also have this sense of, okay, they hit a buzzer beater to get there. Maybe they've got the momentum now.
It didn't feel like it, though.
Yeah, it was a very Nebraska ball way to lose. In the sense of like, okay, we blew the 15-point lead. That really sucks. If you just lose in regulation, that's a bummer, right? Yeah. But to blow the 15-point lead, hit a 3 buzzer beater to push it to overtime, and then get blown out in overtime. That's closing time. Oh. That's what Sanford was singing. Closing time. For Nebraska.
I don't like your tone.
I'm just saying.
I don't like your tone.
My other issue. We've got to address the Juwan Gary-sized elephant in the room.
Bunnyville?
He was terrible.
I listen. I give him grace.
Listen. He does a lot of really good teams.
He does a lot of things.
He does a lot of really.
Was not that young man's night.
He does a lot of really good things for that team. They would not be the same team without Juwan Gary. I get that. Dude was 5 for 21. He took 3 3-pointers. That's 18 twos. And most of his misses were within 7 feet.
Yeah.
I feel like that's being generous.
Yeah.
5 probably.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were on offensive rebounds. He had 8 offensive rebounds.
How about the 3 in a row that he missed on the putbacks, and then Iowa gets the run out?
Yeah. These were crucial close range misses. And a lot of them are shots that he normally makes. But I don't know what was happening with Juwan Gary last night. It was sort of hard to watch at a certain point where he came down with the rebound, and I knew he was going to go back up, and I had zero confidence he was going to be able to put that thing in. And so between those things, right, free throw shooting.
Did it seem like Nebraska had 14 turnovers?
I wouldn't have guessed that number.
I wouldn't have either, except for there was like
there was a stretch at the end where
it
unraveled a little bit. Like it felt like they lost their composure late after they were trying to kind of come back after Iowa had taken the lead. So, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I didn't think it was 14 in total, but there was a stretch where it felt really messy. Yeah. But you're looking at, okay, you've got the stretch where they lose their composure. You got Juwan Gary going 5 for 21. You got 12 for 22 from the free throw line. You're letting basically 2 different guys go for 30 in separate halves, right? In Dix and Sanford. That's essentially what happened.
It's hard to do.
Right? And you still got that game to overtime. Yep. Like I'm gonna have a really hard time putting that on the officials, even though they were terrible.
No,
right. Like they were awful. Nebraska had plenty. This was not a game where I was like, oh man, Nebraska played as well as they could, and it was stolen from them.
It was crazy how, and I guess you got to give Iowa some credit where that team was easily a team that was on the hook. Like they were about out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the crowd,
Nebraska almost had them in the knockout punch.
So
I'm
saying to Maddie on the way home, I'm like, God, these parabolic mics, are they not working? Like, what? This place is.
It was dead.
Dead.
Yeah. You could hear, like, the benches talking.
Oh, I know. Right.
That's like the number one indicator for me when there's a bad crowd is when I can hear players.
And so I was like, they want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go home. And I just felt like if Nebraska, for the flurry of runs, when they cut it to 15, I just felt like if Nebraska could have made a few free throws, just bought themselves some time,
because the missed free throws gave Iowa sort of this artificial stop, like these artificial confidences on stops, where they didn't play good defense. They fouled you. You got to get points there, and you bailed them out by missing your free throws. Like it was, Nebraska helped them out a lot in that stretch, probably like mid-second half, where Nebraska probably should have put them away. They were a lot closer at that point to getting knocked out than they were to coming back.
It's just weird. And at no point in the first half, the second half, or overtime did Nebraska shoot over 67% from the foul line.
Yeah. It was brutal.
But in none of those periods, and even in overtime, they got to the foul line 6 times.
Yeah.
That's a lot in overtime.
Yeah.
Right? You're there 9 times in the second half, 7 times in the first half.
And 6 in overtime.
That's not bad.
It's not bad
at all.
No. I mean, you're not going to
So for as egregious as some of the calls were, the tie-up loose ball after the third missed bunny from Gary.
Yes, yeah.
I was not a huge fan of either. But, whatever. But you're getting to the foul line.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't a huge.
And usually when you can stop the game during runs, you should be good.
Yeah, you should be good. You should be able to compose yourself.
It's not like Auburn and Texas where it was so frantic.
Yeah.
With a couple of these crazy runners and turnaround and Freaking Ravi, Arthur Kaluma was just. I mean, that dude, Kaluma's in the same sentence with one Durantula.
Yeah.
Kevin, Player of the Year at Texas Durant.
That doesn't
where
quite
he
feel
dropped
right.
30. More than 30 on an AP top 5 opponent.
Yeah, it doesn't quite feel right, if I'm being
Kaluma.
honest. Yeah, I know. I remember. I'm aware of him.
Artie.
Arturo? Gotti?
Got him. Got him.
He got it.
No, it just was one of those. So I'm glad you made the distinguish. Two things can be true at once. It was super poorly officiated.
Yes. And Nebraska
But, man,
absolutely should have won that game.
Okay, so at the half,
Should have found a way to win that game.
Me, Jake, so we're like going crazy because we're on set, and every timeout during Nebraska or Big Red wrap up, everybody was on the phones.
Mhm.
Like we're like getting scores, getting updates, and I felt like even though Iowa got off to the quick start, Nebraska left some points on the court at the half.
Oh yeah,
and we argued like weird man verse argued like. I said, Matt, when it was 34-31.
Yeah.
So, and we're walking out, and I'm trying to seriously get in the car. I'm like, let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Because I'm 30 feet behind you. I'm calling blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, did you check the score? Because my hands were full.
Yeah.
He's like, man, it's 39-31. I said, it's not 39-31. He's like, dude, they're up 8. I'm like, no, they're not up 8, Matt. What's the score? So I because my phone was in my suit coat pocket.
Yeah.
And so I finally turned the phone on. And I had just heard KP saying, oh, it's 37-34, Nebraska. And I was like, you idiot. I'm like, I told you. So we argued about that for a couple minutes. Then we got stuck by the train, which never happens, and I blame that on him. So we literally, it's just interesting to watch or listen to something with somebody else that loves to compete.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't buying any of we're just kind of wired the same. Like he wasn't buying the officiating thing at all.
Yeah.
He just was like, play ball.
Yeah.
We're not really good guys to talk to when it comes to like officiating and stuff like that.
And listen, I'm willing to blame stuff on officials. I really am. I'm wired a little different than you are in that sense, but I'm mostly only willing to blame officials when I feel like you did everything you could.
Yeah.
Right?
All things being equal.
Yeah. Like if we get to a tiebreaker, I'll put that on officials.
Although
I will.
Occasionally there can be the critical call.
Sure.
And maybe you think that's the double dribble.
Yes, but there was so much.
I don't know if that was.
There was so much that happened before that. That was my issue with the double dribble, right? There were so many things Nebraska did poorly before that.
When do you think things should be a tie-up? Because now you know what they call more now?
What's that? Guys
diving to engage in locking up a loose ball.
Yeah.
They call that a foul a lot more now.
Yeah. If you make contact with the guy,
It used to just be, get to the floor, tie up.
Yeah. If you make any contact with a guy that's already on the floor, they're going to call you for a foul. Yeah. They just are. And I don't know. Like I am more than willing to blame things on officials. The only time I'm not willing to do it when a game isn't when it's not a tiebreaker is against teams like St. John's or UConn, where they're intentionally being as physical as possible, and you allow them to.
It's a good win by St. John's last night, by the way.
It was. But when you're allowing them to dictate how a game's being played and it's clearly an advantage to them, I'll put that on the officials too. Yeah. It's up to the officials to kind of control teams like St. John's that are just going to be as physical as you allow them to be. If you allow St. John's, they'll put you in a rugby match, right? The officials have the obligation to keep that under wraps to a certain degree so that you have somewhat of an even playing field. Those are the only times I'm willing. Those are the only times I'm willing to put things on officials. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's fine. I get easily distracted.
You do, especially every time they talk about the Steelers on ESPN.
They're on every day.
They really are.
Every morning. They really they're not even the most popular team in the league.
So that's what I was gonna say. Is it sort of confuses me?
Yes. I don't
because they're not that nationally.
No, now they do travel well.
Yes, but they're not
ESPN every morning.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Like
there's better teams, better stories.
And there's teams that probably have a more national appeal.
Fudge, man. It's like
as much
treating
as
them like Dallas.
So that's what I was gonna say. As much as I don't care for the constant Dallas storylines,
should the Steelers entertain the trading Mike Tomlin? First of all,
they know what that is about.
And I had this conversation with Husker X's and O's yesterday. He has a no trade clause. Second of all,
so he'd have to sign off on it.
Like, what are we doing?
You know what I heard somebody make the argument for the other day?
Oh God!
You ready for this? It was the Steelers argument that the reason the Steelers haven't broke through is Mike Tomlin's fault for being too good of a coach that they couldn't bottom out.
Yeah.
That's the argument I've been hearing.
There's this dude. He's on my algorithm now, and he's called Mike Tomlin a snake oil salesman because Mike Tomlin admitting to wanting to run the ball out of not wanting to turn it over via throwing it, even though they have been inept yards per carry in the league. Like their EPA, it's low, and they still run it anyway. And so Tomlin talks about playing a certain way with a certain level of physicality, and this guy is like up in arms. Like, man, it's Tomlin, man. How can we talk about this no fear thing? And he doesn't want to put the ball in the air and run the ball. It's not how he talks because he looks a lot more like Amazing Daniel than he does me. But
what's Amazing Daniel sound like?
You be you. Not gonna get me. You're not gonna get me.
Not in segment one?
No, and have him tune in and be like, man, it's too early for this.
He's on Eastern time. It's 8:00 there.
Yeah. Well, he might have had a concert or something last night.
That's true.
So it's like, relax.
Yeah.
Relax.
Here's the funny thing too, is if you like switch the scenarios, I like doing that to say like, hey, if you're mad about this, would you be happy about the other thing or would you still be mad?
Yeah.
Because let's switch the scenarios there, right? Let's say you've got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as your quarterback. You got George Pickens that's letting things bounce off his face, can't catch the football, right, as your best receiver.
That's a little much.
Is it?
Okay.
We all bring bags, right?
Put the joke Tourette's down right there for a second.
Is it? But I felt like
I almost made a comment where that definitely would have got us fired. Well, me for sure. But on the other side of that coin, right? You're like, oh, he's being a coward and he's running the football and he's going back on what he says about no fear. What's the alternative there? You really want Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to air it out?
I know.
Because that's coaching malpractice. Right. So like on the other side of it, you're like, okay, yeah, I would love it, Mike Tomlin, if you take this guy that you're paying peanuts because Denver is paying him to play somewhere else, and then Justin Fields, who they couldn't get out of Chicago fast enough, you want one of those guys to air it out. So like, if you're just mad at both those scenarios, you're just mad to be mad, right? Like if you don't like the alternative, then you're not mad about what's happening.
It
you're
is
just
funny
mad.
though. I was listening to one of the national shows that compared kind of the Colts to the Steelers, except in a worse division, where that the Colts should just be bad for this year.
Well, the Colts have a different problem, and his name is Anthony Richardson.
They ain't too much different. Steelers got a quarterback issue.
Oh, they do, but they haven't invested in a young quarterback super early the way the Colts have. That's the real problem. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll set up the show maybe sometime later.
Maybe.
It's Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Reminding you, if you're on your way to work, make sure your eyes are focused and straight ahead as the driver. You've got one job to do. That is to drive. This message brought to you by the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB.
Huh?
How you feeling this morning? You doing all right?
Yeah. It's good morning music.
Yeah, what do we have coming in?
We went with Jelly Roll.
Oh, I should have known that. You were singing Jelly Roll coming in.
And then I went to Future and Lil Gunna.
No gospel music coming in today?
Nope.
You rolling with gospel music a lot.
Nope. I went with Metro Boomin.
Metro Boomin.
I'll play it for you. A lot of people play it. It's Future, and a lot of people play it in warm-ups.
Okay.
It's very.
I've lost a little touch with the current music crowd since I don't.
Since you act like you're 70.
I do act like a very old man.
It's kind of weird.
I'm finally aging into my personality.
Me, not so much.
You definitely act younger than I do.
Yeah.
I act like I'm ancient and retired. I'm not. Although I kind of move like I do sometimes.
I must have been being snarky last night, and
no, that doesn't sound like you.
No, like I mean, not no. I mean, I'm funny, but I'm not like.
You're definitely less sarcastic than I am.
Okay, so I must have been on like a little bit of roll during like the TV break, and Jay Moore, who's pretty kind of buttoned up, he goes, "Dang man, I hate to hear what you say about me," and I'm like, in my heart, I was like, "But Jay, I love you." But I love you, Jay, because I do, right? Like I mean, I think a lot of him, so I hope I don't.
I feel like that's where people get into trouble with you. Is the more you like them, the crazier you'll talk about.
Yeah, but I'll mess with Jay. Like we're cool, and plus we're usually vibing.
Yeah,
like I'm trying to get him to come. I like Jay.
Yeah,
I do.
I don't know him,
and Vers does too, so we can go hang out. And he said that that's his favorite pizza, and I didn't know that.
Is Jay here or in Lincoln?
He's in Lincoln.
Okay.
Remember I told you after Colorado he walked.
Oh
home?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm Team Moore.
Big Jay Moore guy.
Yeah. He likes Paisan.
Former,
and his boy was just in there. Like Chris was just in there the other day. Kelsey, so I was like, "Hey man, we just go have a small reunion. Not gonna do it when it's open, but."
Former 49er great Jay Moore.
You always say that.
I do.
That's cool. I like the Niners. I mean, I don't dislike the Niners.
Yeah, you don't actively.
And I like Jay. So
not like the Cowboys.
Hey, so by the way, Jessica did the NBR pod.
Yeah.
What do you think that they recorded last night? What do you think that's going to be like?
Ooh.
I suggest they're nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they record before or after the game?
So she was on her way, I think, when I was going to Lincoln. So before?
Or almost like during.
During?
I think it might have been during.
I can't wait to hear how this went.
Oh, no look pass, Green.
It'll be funny if they were keeping track of the game real time while doing the pod.
Oh, no look pass, Green.
Yeah, we heard it the first time, Shane. Thank you.
Hey, one more time, because Ravi loves that.
Oh, no look pass, Greasel to Casey.
I'm going to cut somebody. No, it's fine.
You're going to cut somebody?
Oh, no look pass.
Now I got to cut you. You're going to be all right.
Shane might not be.
He's fine. I can't wait to hear that.
No,
especially because you know how those guys.
Oh yeah. I hope they were keeping track real time of the game, because if they were,
it could get hectic.
It'll be really funny. Yeah. No, they're fun. Have you ever done that podcast?
Yeah.
NBNR?
Yeah. I did it
over at the brewery.
Yeah.
I think that's where everybody does it.
Dude, I couldn't. So I shouldn't be surprised because we both know T. Mose.
Yeah.
And one of my peers that I work with, the two fastest beer drinkers that I know.
Okay.
I was still mortified at the efficiency during that podcast.
Of just how they were just pounding them?
Yeah, just like no, and it's not like
it's like water.
It wasn't like
they were like chugging.
Like Revenge of the Nerds, where it was like intentional draw attention, slam a beer. It was just like
they just regularly drink beer. Really
say 7 words,
drink.
Say 7 words, done. Say 7 words next. Say 14 words next 2. Like they
get after it,
and it just was seamless.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one got squirrely.
Do you have?
It snuck up on me.
I'm gonna make him mad here. Do you have a favorite of the guys?
No, but I do like. So here's one thing I do like.
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of different.
They are.
You got the data head.
That's the only reason
you
it
have
works.
The super fan.
Yeah.
You have the contrarian. And then you kind of have like what's his bucket? He's sitting to my right. Kind of the taskmaster. Like
Jared.
Yeah, he kind of keeps it.
You know what's funny?
Moving.
He's the craziest one of them all.
So that's what everybody says.
I love Jared.
So that's what everybody says.
Like Jared, I love our guy KB. I love Kyle. Yeah. Jared might be my favorite. Yeah, because I've hosted with him a few times.
They're all a little different.
I've hosted with him a few times when you've been out, and I really like Jared a lot.
Mm.
But they all have their own different personalities, which is the only way a 4-man podcast works. Like if there was any overlap there at all, that'd be tough to listen to. But it's if you haven't checked it out, No Block No Rock. It's a great podcast. But it's a very I'll be interested to hear what the one with Cootie last night sounds like.
Yeah, I haven't. I was too busy.
I hope somebody had the game up on their computer while they were.
Yeah, so I'm super short on. Like I didn't get a chance to catch up with her, but I'm because I had to go back and get Nebraska basketball. Then I was watching Auburn, Texas. I was watching Carolina, SMU. And I'm blaming you for this because I should move on from Hubert Davis because I know what I'm dealing with. I've watched it like every almost like I watch it all the time. But I'd let you low key gas my fire by saying Schneid stuff.
Here's the problem.
No.
Here's the problem.
No. Because my other, so I have like 5 True Blue fans.
Okay.
A couple of them are on Twitter.
I'm not True Blue, but I like North Carolina. I really do. I know you don't believe me.
My man St. Louis Jordan is True Blue.
Okay.
Like we like that's my Carolina brother.
Okay.
And even I hate his Cardinals. Love the organization, hate his Cardinals.
Okay.
We talk a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes text messages get buried like during the show.
Sure, because you have a lot coming in.
And I just sometimes I don't go back and get them. And he said one that I should have cut you off yesterday.
Who, me?
My man was like, okay, we get it. He doesn't like Hubert Davis.
Does anybody?
Well, okay. Hashtag be kind.
Here's the thing.
He was driving me up the wall last night.
No, here's why I don't let the Hubert Davis thing drop. I don't want you to get like Stockholm syndrome.
Oh, I won't. Don't you have to worry about your boy.
Well, we're talking to other people too, though. You know, there's a lot of North Carolina fans in Omaha. Like there really is. There's a pretty large contingent of North Carolina, at least in my age group.
Behind Creighton, behind Nebraska, behind Kansas.
But in my age group, there's a lot of North Carolina fans. I
don't think you know that many people. I don't think just because you know 7 North Carolina fans, there's a lot of North Carolina fans.
I mean, 7's a lot.
7 is not a lot.
It depends on what we're talking about.
Oh, good point. 7 would be a lot for Shane. Shane, by the way, how did the cinnamon rolls treat you last night?
Like
buddy?
if you're 7 feet tall, that's a lot.
That's not what I was thinking.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, oh, they were fire.
Okay, Will.
Oh, they were fire.
Were they?
Yeah.
Did you eat any protein yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Burrs brought Zoe some cheese pizza.
Nice.
Because he rode with me. You know they're big slices.
Oh, yeah.
She had 3.
Yeah.
Plus a cinnamon roll.
I can barely eat 3 in a sitting.
Plus a cinnamon roll.
That's aggressive.
And so when I told her, I said, yeah, I got her from school. And I was like, Zoe, I was like, look. I was like, you got cinnamon rolls. So she opened the lid and she smelled them and she's like kicking her feet up on the couch because she loves cinnamon rolls. And I knew I had to leave and it was going to be hectic to get dinner going. So I said, hey, Maddie, can you bring Ryder some pizza just so I could feel better about being gone during dinner and stuff like that? And I said, Zoe, I said, Uncle Maddie's coming. He's bringing your cheese pizza. And she's rolling on the couch. And she goes, is it my birthday or what?
I was going to say best day ever for her. Cinnamon roll and pizza. Let's go.
Like, oh,
I will say the cinnamon rolls are pastry chef wife approved. She smashed.
I wondered because so when you're this is funny.
Yeah.
When you're eating that yesterday, you're critiquing it like goddamn Gordon Ramsay. And I think you just come by it naturally because it's a pastry. And you're like, oh, it's fluffy. It's not as rich and sugary as you think. I think it's being cut with some of the butter and the fat. I was like, oh, my God. Just eat the goddamn thing.
To be fair, you were asking me like in-depth questions about it.
Because it smelled amazing, so I had to live vicariously through you
because
I love cinnamon rolls.
I was trying to help you out.
They looked sensational.
They were good. She ate the one with the fruit on top. She smashed that thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And she's a pig. Okay.
Yeah. So they are approved.
Okay.
They are approved. Now, to be fair, just context, she also does love Taco Bell. So I'm
only once a month.
I don't know. She would eat it every day, but there is a clockwork there. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, reminding you to get to supernovas.com to get your tickets for the opening match of the season for your Omaha Supernovas this Friday. That's just 2 days from now at CHI Health Center. Get to supernovas.com to get your tickets today as they open up their season with the Atlanta Vibe and they raise that championship banner. DB.
Yes, sir.
Have not had any championship banners raised with the Las Vegas Raiders for a while.
Oh, yep. I thought you were going to say Pittsburgh, and I was going to really have to come unglued.
I would never.
Let's not act like you guys are holding up your end of the deal.
More recently than the 49ers.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the first Super Bowl I remember watching start to finish was the 49ers Chargers.
Oh, at 94?
Yeah.
5? Yeah, I had a really, 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 really bad date over.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't a very good Super Bowl.
I thought it was a great Super Bowl, but it wasn't competitive.
No.
Hey, have you ever – I shouldn't even tell this story quickly.
Go for it.
She ran track. She was not local.
She's a runner. She's a track star?
Mm-hmm. And kind of like a unicorn on campus. I'll just leave it at that. And
okay.
So it's like, super low key, right? Department. I lived on Old Cheney, Super Bowl. Most people are with their boys. I was sure that I really like her. How about? So short story long, I talked for a couple of days, and I said something to my roommate, and he's like, "Oh, such and such said something about her." Then a couple of minutes later, it was, "Oh, such and such said no, such and such said something about her," and then it was 88 people said something about her. I was like, "Oh my God, I think I may have made a mistake." And then it was at the training table. It was, yeah. So that's I mean, what happened? Like, it's like football and hanging out, and then nothing. I was like, well, sorry about that.
Sometimes you get some additional information about a situation, and
like where was I?
Head in the sand, maybe.
Apparently.
Good morning again.
Apparently. That's what I remember about the Chargers-Niners Super Bowl, by the way.
I remember
that is classic. You bring that up.
I remember, just Stan Humphries not being able to do anything. Natron Means.
Business.
No, I was that's where I'm still a huge Steve Young fan. I love Steve Young.
I think, so Steve Young may be the best. I don't think this is hyperbole. Okay. The best, most productive, winning quarterback that is underappreciated as much as he is. He is an utter afterthought in the pantheon of quarterback play.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, who he followed, right? Following Montana is not easy.
So I'm going to get his QB rating.
It was the highest of all time for a long time. After he retired.
It's got to be close to 100.
I believe it's like 98 career.
He was incredible.
He had a very strange career though. Like his career arc was very unusual.
Well, it was just quick. He never was really bad outside of Tampa.
No, I just mean the way he finally got to the 49ers. Like you've got the USFL and you've got Tampa.
Do you know who I compare him to?
Who?
This is amazing.
Warren Moon
said this. It's not even the same sport.
Oh, okay.
But it's a guy that I have a weird affinity for that plays for a franchise that I hate.
Who?
Steve Young is like the Don Mattingly of football.
Oh, interesting.
Donald Arthur Mattingly. Surrounded by Wade Boggs and a bunch of other punching Judies.
Yeah.
Didn't play long enough. Played a position where he didn't have power numbers for being a corner guy.
Yeah, for corner. Baseman. Yeah, corner infielder. Yeah.
Career kind of cut short because of injuries, but really prolific while he played. Mm-hmm. I have some Steve Young, Donald Arthur Mattingly vibes. Don Mattingly may be the most random player that I cheer for that doesn't have anything to do with a team I've ever liked.
Yeah, that is a total random
big Don Mattingly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at the reason I brought up his strange, like he didn't start for the 49ers full time until he was 30.
And remember, it was a problem.
Yeah.
It was a problem in that clubhouse.
I think people forget because Joe Montana got hurt, right? But I think people forget that there was actually a couple-year overlap.
Yeah, and people in Montana felt some type of way about being pushed out.
Yeah, where Steve Young was starting over Joe Montana, and Joe Montana was still on the roster.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And then you had a lot of the locker room feel a certain way because they were riding with Joe Montana.
I didn't see you in the locker room. What are you trying
As you can understand, because that dude won 4 Super Bowls, and you're like, hey, he's pretty good. What are we doing here? But Steve Young had a super strange career in that sense in terms of like where his career arc was. But you're right. Like that dude does not get a lot of credit for how good he is and how good he was. I was trying to find his career QB rating. And of course, my Googling skills fail me once again.
I want you. So this is the thing. Remember, I'm always talking about gamification and get better and stuff. Practice.
No.
I want you to sit at the house.
Yep.
And I want you to just think like
of a thing and try and Google
it. Like 1988 Celtics.
Okay.
And Google, and then see what the keywords that you need to type in that you actually want to know. Win percentage, record, head to head. Like,
so I think I'm too general when I Google.
Yeah, you gotta get better. I can't even defer to you. So like HBO,
we're gonna work.
I want to be able to hand a baton. You can be like the anchor. I'll be the slow guy. Like so that would be like the third guy.
I think third guy on the relationship.
Yeah. I'll be him. You close that baby out. As long as we all get gold.
I found it. You ready?
Yeah.
UBU.
96.8.
God.
96.8 career.
Slow motion is better than no motion.
You know, it's what's a slow motion for me?
No.
No?
No. Let's pull up TK, speaking of slow motion.
TK, what's going on, bud? TK, what's up?
Tomas.
Good morning, fellas. How we doing?
Cucharera. How you doing, buddy? How about that for a butcher?
Oh, another day in paradise.
Another day.
Ravi,
Where you hiding? You hiding in the gym bathroom, or where are you at, man? You sound like you're on a tarmac.
Bro, the streets are too bad still, so I can't go to my regular gym. So I'm stuck in the complex gym doing stuff.
Oh, okay.
And there's like this, elliptical from the 70s. They have dumbbells that range from 5 pounds to 50 pounds, but no like 35 or 40. It's just like random conglomerations. They got like one kettlebell.
Hey,
and another kettlebell that's 120.
You can ISO, right? You just you know, like one at a time, baby. Anyway, what's on your mind, champ? What's on your mind, champ?
I am very angry
with
this narrative that's going around Nebraska football that due to the current conditions of the sport that we can't be and will never be a developmental program ever again if we want to be successful.
So do you feel like that? You feel like that's a consensus? Like it has to be either or?
No, I feel like that is what people are pushing.
Yeah.
I feel like you can do both things, obviously. Like Ohio State has had lots of players who have been there for 6 years. And then they also took like Quinson Judkins. Or Notre Dame. Most of Notre Dame starters stayed there. And they take some dudes from the portal to supplement. But there's this narrative going around that, oh, you can't develop anybody. That's why we have to go get two new tackles. We have to go get all these people because we're not going to be able to do. We don't trust our coaches to coach people up, and it really bugs me. It's not like we've seen Luke Lindenmeyer be turned in from a walk-on to a guy who's had a legitimate shot to make the NFL.
No, I'm with you,
TK. Appreciate the call.
We talked about that a little bit yesterday when you went into it was a mini dive. It wasn't deep. You're probably going in at about 8 feet.
Oh, the transfer numbers from Ohio State versus
not so much that as much as 9 of the 14 guys that
Nebraska
has
years.
Gotten in the portal have multiple years on their belt.
Yeah,
that they can play.
I don't know where this narrative started. Like I don't know who was the first person to say it.
Yeah.
But you say
probably some guy on TikTok that can't read.
You say this all the time. Some people can make you dumber.
Yeah.
Right? Developing football players.
Shots fired.
Developing football players is still going to be a crucial part of being successful.
And it's who
at
they are.
Any level.
It's who they are as a staff too.
Do you think the NFL doesn't develop anybody?
Just look at how he put the staff together.
100%. But like, you think the NFL doesn't develop players?
Yeah, no,
they've been getting paid for a while, right?
Again, I think they're going to be very fiscally savvy on how to use the portal. They'll want multi-year guys, and I still think they want to develop. He's playing the long game. He's in year 3 of what he's formulating in his head is minimum of 8. Now, whether it plays out that way or not is one thing, but from the schooling to the family moves to the business setups to the personal fiscal ventures, he's playing the long game here.
Yeah. And there has never been any indication that you can't go out and get good players that are ready to go and still bring in guys that need to develop.
It's like TV said the other day, Timmy Verghese. Can I call him Timmy?
Might as well. He's not here.
Not any ready-made guys yet that they've got out of the portal. They still got to compete.
No, they
we
still
heard
got
Shafe yesterday. You're not going to bury any of these guys that are already on the roster with any of these guys you brought in yet.
No, I don't think so.
Still development.
You still got to go work. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Coming up next, we got Brian Christopherson. We can get into this more on here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, you got guys that walking into Ace Hardware without their shirts on.
Brian Christopherson.
We got a pretty good sewing circle in this state.
Brian Christopherson.
To me, it's like crunch time, baby.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, I'm still a pilgrim in an unholy land here in Iowa City. That's what's going on.
Oh, God,
oh
no.
my goodness. Hey, so where'd you stay in Coralville, B?
What am I at? I'm at a Country Inn and Suites, I think. I'm not at an airport, so that's good.
Are you right next door to the barbecue place? And the
I am pretty close.
Retail
is
strip
that
mall?
Jethro's?
Yes,
Jethro's
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So you know
Yeah.
what, BC?
So-
Full disclosure, considering I'm half Iowegian, I know you've heard this over since Noah Fant days. I did not know. I would like for you to do a little homework and see when that Jethro's was around, because I'm over there quite a bit, and I didn't notice that Jethro's until this last game at Iowa City. And I'm big Jethro's guy, even though I know they're not all created equal. Ankeny, Ankeny, the GOAT. The little bacon one in Des Moines, number 2. I don't know about what's going on in Iowa City.
Okay. I have actually never. We tried to go there, my brother and I, when we were here once, and the wait was too long. So I've never been there, but I will keep it in mind to make it a stop. But maybe some of the other ones, not this one.
The bacon one in Des Moines is incredible, but primarily for breakfast. The one in Ankeny next to Adventureland, kinda, and out by Altoona, the GOAT of smoked ribeyes.
The way that it goes for Nebraskans in Iowa City, though, if I went there, the meal would start really good for about 2/3 it'd be great, and then I'd start to feel sick. So
Is that not incredible? So we're riding home from Big Red Wrap Up last night, and Verzog goes, in typical Matty fashion, he goes, "Are we ever going to close against Iowa? Are we ever going to close the deal against?" And he was so serious. I was like terrified. I was just trying to keep my cruise control and the wheels straight because he's like losing his mind in the car. But yeah, isn't that weird how it doesn't matter what the sport, they just out endure us?
Yeah. Another frustrating one. I mean, you got to tip your cap a little bit. There was too much space for Josh Dix, especially like even in the first half when Nebraska was playing with had the lead. He had 16.5, but second half, you could tell Peyton Sanford was just on one. I mean, there was a cut. Fred was right. I had the same feeling. Fred Hoiberg said after the game, when Sanford hit the shot, that bounced a few feet up, hits the top of the backboard, goes in. You just kind of had that like, oh no, this is not going to go well. I think it was an 8-point game when that shot left his hand, and it was 5 when it came down in the net. And, the run was completely on at that point.
I felt like Price's from the corner that cut it to 62-61 off the second offensive rebound. Like, I thought that was the one where I was like, shoot. Bryce had just made those free throws. They got it to 4. And then little brother knocks down the corner 3 before the TV timeout. Like, that was the one where I felt like, oh, poop, they're in trouble.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's always that run that is going to come, and if you can keep it at like 4 or 5 and then push back and get that next bucket, it's sometimes demoralizing to the team that's trying to run up the hill. And after it got down to 1 at that timeout, it was like, okay, it's just momentum clearly on their side. All that said, I know people are talking about the officiating too today, but you wish that double dribble gets called and Nebraska's ball down 1 with 9-10 seconds left, and you see what happens. But so it goes, and Juwan Gary after the game was sort of defiant, like this isn't going to be like last year with this road narrative. We're not doing this thing again where it took till the 8th try for Nebraska to break through. That's not going to be the type of team this is. Now that the test is not letting a loss like this push beyond 24 hours in your brain, which is not going to be easy. And obviously they're playing at Purdue this weekend, which is one of the tougher, maybe the toughest environment in the Big Ten, I think a lot of people would say. So it is a difficult I knew this was going to be a difficult week, but the degree went up after that kind of loss. You'd almost rather, I hesitate to say this, but it's almost easier to come back when you just didn't play well, like at Michigan State, than a game like this.
BC, I want to talk about Juwan Gary for a second here, because obviously he does a ton of things for Nebraska that they absolutely need. But, man, he really, really struggled yesterday, obviously with those short-range putbacks. He got 8 offensive rebounds. I don't know if he finished any of those. Maybe one. Like, what were you seeing with Juwan Gary where he just couldn't figure out how to finish yesterday? I mean, I'm not trying to pile on here, but his field goal percentage on the season dropped 3.5 points yesterday.
No, he ended up 5 of 21. And he did pile up a bunch of boards. Some of it was off his own misses,
right?
Not being snarky. That's just how the stats got compiled. So he ended up, I think, with 13 points, 13 rebounds, if I'm remembering right. Which you'd take that stat line on the surface any day, but you're right. It was just like his feel around the bucket was just off yesterday. Some of the shots weren't actually that close either. It felt like Nebraska, especially after Iowa hit a couple shots there, to start pushing in that 15-point lead. I don't know. They just got a little hurried or something around the rim, where kind of throwing up some trash at times, where it just wasn't what it could have been in certain cases, where it was set up actually for a guy to finish, but he would, whether it was Gary or someone else, he would put something up where he was like kind of off balance or didn't set himself or what. All these different variances of plays, you just thought maybe they could have done that a little differently, but tough loss. Bryce Williams obviously is a gamer, and that three hit actually that cut it to 74-73 was incredible.
Oh, I know. I'm like, oh, so we got a chance.
Yeah. Suddenly pulled him back from the abyss there, and then he hits the other one, and you're thinking, hey, who knows? Maybe Bryce is going to will him to it. But Iowa got a loose ball right away in overtime, and Fred Hoiberg said you just didn't get back in transition defense like you need to.
That was my whole thing.
Yep. You're right. And Dix was open from the corner how many times? Just way too many.
So during that run, which was when you cut a 15-0 run, like you think it's going to actually happen quicker than what Iowa did it in, because Nebraska was so poor at the foul line in between that. So it's like dead ball stops. But it was just weird how off of like, either leaky runouts or half kind of hearted closeouts, Nebraska just wasn't close enough to shooters, which you tip your cap for guys making shots, right? I mean, clearly Sanford went on a heater, but man, you'd just like to have seen a little more like contested effort. You know what I mean? Like those guys are gonna make shots, but you just wish, I think, as a competitor, that like you'd have laid it on the line to get a hand in the face.
Yeah, they did hit a few incredible ones, but you're right. There were way too many.
The step back heat check.
Yeah,
it's like, oh boy.
But that's the kind of position you put yourself in when you're not getting out on shooters.
How about
in the
one
place,
that rattled around that he had no business shooting from like 27 feet? I was like, oh, he's feeling it.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of it. There has to be that awareness. I mean, obviously, they study these guys on film for all day, for days going into the game, so they understand this. But they just weren't respecting that Iowa does have guys who will let it go from 7 feet behind the arc. They're just they're kind of built like that. They're not afraid to let it loose, and when they're feeling it like that, you gotta contest even beyond the 3-point line a few feet, and Nebraska wasn't doing that as well as they could have. And Bryce Williams afterwards said that they willed that win. They had the edge, and we were on our heels, and there you go. And so I did see a Nebraska team last year that lost a game that felt a little like this early when they were at Minnesota. People remember to start Big Ten play, and of course that started a bad road narrative, so hopefully that's not the same thing here. But that team had a resiliency to come back pretty quickly from it, and we'll see if this team can can do that to what I think is really the first loss where it just like it sticks in your craw just in a terrible way. The St. Mary's game was tough, but nothing like this. So it's always a challenge, I think, when the team has that first game of the year, which is bound to happen. You don't want it to, but there is that one game where it's like, how did that get away? And now what do you do with that? So we'll see what they come back with.
BC, so if relative to what we think Nebraska's identity is going to be, which and don't let the 97 points in overtime fool you yesterday. It's a good defensive team. Like, how would you utilize kind of some of the backbone guys like Morgan, Sam to some degree, even Juwan Gary? It's not like you can say, hey, don't shoot. But some of those guys really do know their roles, and I do think it's kind of in Nebraska's DNA. How would you sprinkle those guys in terms of what they mean to your team?
Yeah,
because what did Morgan play? Did Morgan get to 20 minutes last night?
I wish I had my sheet in front of me. I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm pulling it up. But,
right at 20.
Because at some point
right
I'm like,
20.
gosh, just foul it. Like,
just
foul
right
a guy hard. Or some, like there were just things I was thinking in my head. I was like, is this a thing?
Yeah. I mean, every guy's got to understand his role, what his strengths are, and I really find a way to accentuate those. And I did think with Andrew Morgan, I love when he gets the ball down the blocks, you sense there's just a confidence that he can get stuff done. But I also thought yesterday he hit a three. He had another one before that was down and out. That was a good looking shot. And so, if a guy like him can add, one or two of those a game to what he has, that would be big. With Juwan, and I don't know. It's just, he was just off with his touch the other day. And so you hope it was just a one game thing.
It seems like he and Berke should change roles offensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that too linear? Like, I think Berke has more offensive game in the holster than we've seen.
Yeah, that's possible. That's been the one storyline I've been talking about for a month, and then in Hawaii we were teased with it a little bit because Berke hit a few outside shots. One of them he banked in, but he showed that he could do that. Like Fred has sort of talked about how he's like in practice. And I've always thought, if Berke could find that piece of his game and become a little bit more of an offensive threat, it definitely takes this team up another notch, and they would be a different animal the last month of the season. So I don't know if that can happen or not. Juwan's always been an interesting player because he'll have some games where that rainbow shot is off, and you almost are like, don't shoot it, man. And then he'll have, the next time out, he'll hit 4 3-pointers, and they'll be clutch ones. Like, you think back to Saturday, I think he had 10 points against UCLA, but he just hit a timely three every time Nebraska seemed like they needed it. So he is one of those guys who, from night to night, the shot can look really, really pretty, or it can look like last night. So, the good thing about him is he's a pretty confident guy with a strong mental edge. So if there's one player on the team who I could respond and bounce back from a night like last night, it's him.
Yeah, BC, I think that's the part that's kind of infuriating about the game last night for Juwan Gary is it wasn't the jumpers, right? I think everybody can kind of live with the hot and cold jump shooting of Juwan Gary. It's, hey, I've got the ball 3 feet from the hoop and cannot even make it look close last night. That was the part that I don't even know what to do with that if I'm Nebraska or a Nebraska fan.
Well, I mean, I've seen him make a lot of buckets around the hoop, and so that again, you just hope it's one of those nights where it wasn't on, and you just didn't have the feel for it. But it was a tough game because it was a guy who was really working his butt off to get second chance, third chance, unfortunately, sometimes fourth chance because of what we're talking about opportunities. But you're right. I looked down at the stat sheet at one point. I was like, oh, he's 3 of 15 or something. And then it's 5 of 21 at the end. So tough deal because if you make a couple of those, you win. And then the free throws, of course, they end up 12 of 22, I think. Raleigh Wooster had a tough day at the line. He was 2 of 7. And, this is a team that was good at it, has been good at it, 25 of 29 on Saturday. So that's got to be something that they excel on going forward because they do get to the line a lot.
BC, let me take advantage of your versatility. When I look at Nebraska in the transfer portal, and obviously in the NIL era, like you kind of get market values are kind of set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How important do you think like fiscal savvy or versus, well, this is just kind of the cost of doing business can impact Nebraska, like with, position by position? Obviously, tackles are going to be very expensive and quarterbacks are going to be very expensive. Like, how important do you think fiscal savvy will be in the long if Nebraska's playing the long game?
I think that's a pretty big deal. You don't want to just throw away money. It is difficult, though. The question you're asking gets you to a topic that they probably have had to have meetings upon meetings where you think about how much are you willing to spend for a player who has done – it's weird that we're talking about this, but this is college football right now, right? So how much are you willing to give to a player who has been inconsistent or maybe wasn't even the top 2 or 3 on his O-line or something like that. Like you really have to look at that and be like, how could he develop here? That type of player. Is there someone else who's going to be less heralded, maybe from a school that's not as high profile, but we like the film better? And I think the biggest thing is you have to not be worried about what the initial public reaction is to stuff and just force something to force it, just for that big headline, if you know what I mean. Like, and I'm not trying to say that there's not a specific player they shouldn't get or should get. I just think there is right now a definite anxiousness for Nebraska to land an O lineman, but you just have to be really smart about it and not just push it to be like, okay, you got your headline on a Wednesday. You feel good. Everybody feels good here in January, but are you going to feel good in August about it? And it sounds like I'm talking real cryptic about, the Alabama guy who's in, but I'm not.
Not really. I mean, it's better than like guys getting on, Twitter or TikTok and saying, oh, must get guy, like, because it sets a bad narrative for actually how it works. It's not just like, well, there's a good guy available, do what you got to do. Like, I just don't think Nebraska wants to be in that business. I don't.
Yeah, that's the way you said it too. I like that because we are in this time where it's like must get, like all this reaction to certain guys, and sometimes there is that guy. I know the New Mexico State guy is out there, his name too, as a potential visitor. Sorry, I was a little disconnected from it yesterday because I was traveling. But there are players like that too who, you could look at, say, I like his upside just as much as this other guy who played in a power conference. Maybe you put them together and you say, actually, I like the guy who was at Alabama, but I just think when you make decisions, and I think they're like this, you don't want to be influenced by the public narrative or the way the reaction is going to be to one guy over another guy. It's got to be a steadfast belief. Like we talked to this player on the visit and we really feel like he fits what we're about. He can grow here. And maybe that is a guy like Elijah Pritchett. Maybe it's the guy like Pete from New Mexico State or someone else who's going to pop in the portal at some point. So it's a big deal to land one, I think, but it's got to be the right one. You really got to do the homework the best you can and not worry about what the headline is going to be, or this one is going to cause more of a tremor than another one. You just can't be on your radar at all, I think.
BC, it's kind of interesting, the offensive tackle transfer situation, right? Because you've got Pritchett from Alabama, former 5-star, super highly touted. you look at him, it's like, okay, he's got some experience. Maybe you aren't in love with the tape. And then you've got Pete from New Mexico, proven guy at a lower level. It kind of encapsulates Nebraska's strategy in general over this transfer period, right? They've got a handful of guys that are high upside, high talent, but no production yet. And then they've got a bunch of guys that are really high performers at smaller levels. Like, that seems pretty intentional to have both, right?
I'd agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. And I mean, Matt Rule's talked even about the two-pronged approach too in the portal, where it's sort of like the NFL, where there are those, like, okay, you're going to have to commit a lot, of money to a certain position or a certain guy. And then there's these other ones where it's a value piece, or you see like the development aspect of it, like Gabe Moore, the defensive lineman might be an example of that. But who's to say? But, maybe he comes in and he's a guy they like right away. So that's the fascinating thing about the portal. But I do think it's important to not just get caught up in some of the power conference guys. Like, one of my favorite gets they have is Andrew Marshall out of Idaho, from everything I've heard about him. And I like him just because of his versatility. Can also be a return man and all that. But, that's a kid who's confident and grew a lot in his game last year. And I had a chance to talk to him, one of the few portal guys. They don't do as many interviews once they're in the portal as they do in their high school recruits. But he believes in himself a lot after what he did at Idaho. And he maybe did that stuff sort of out of the view of most national college football fans, but he did it, and he knows he did it, and he believes he can do it at this level. So when you find determined guys like that, even if they're not on everybody's radar, that makes all the difference.
BC, we've only got about 90 seconds left, but we were talking yesterday morning after, NDSU, and, Gronkowski's on the move from SDSU, and Bryce Hawthorne's a guy in the D-line heading to Iowa from SDSU. And, of course, it came up about Marty Brown. I'm a huge Sharmar Brown guy, and not necessarily specific to him, but with all the visits that Nebraska's had on campus, and none of them have been running backs, do you get the sense that Nebraska feels pretty good about that running back room?
I do. I mean, I take coaches at their word maybe more than people say I should. Rule has really expressed that a lot, even when times weren't as great for the running backs, when we were, people were kind of complaining about this and that before Emmett Johnson kind of went on the tear at the end. He would always say, I like this room. He's always been sort of a fan of Quentin Ives and some of those guys who aren't as high profile too. So, I do think that they like that position, and, maybe they're willing to see what the spring looks like, and, just see where it takes it. But obviously having Emmett back makes you feel a lot better about it. But I think there's guys 2, 3, and Jamarian Parker and Booth, they like them a lot too. So, maybe one of those guys adds to the equation. So that's not the position that's the biggest worry to me. I don't think it is them either. So we'll see what they do with it.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Thanks, B.
Kevin Sjuts coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, here on the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we are joined now by our friend Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. What's going on, Kevin?
Good morning. I know it's too late to say Happy New Year, but it's the first time I've talked to you in 2025, so Happy New Year.
Kevin, how are things, man? You survived New York, right? That's always a bonus.
I survived New York, but I'm currently on the disabled list, dealing with a back injury. I hope to be on air for the first time in the new year tonight, slowly recovering. I've learned through this process, though, guys, that when you chain a guy to his chair, you watch and know a whole lot more sports than when you're running around and covering things.
Wait, so is it difficult for you, Mr. Sjuts, to be a spectator and not an active participant?
Yes, but I found the joy in it. Like
okay.
So what people do normally, like outside of my profession, at night, you can flip from game to game to game. You're like, this is a 14-point game. Like Mississippi State last night. I was excited to watch and get a pulse on those guys. I've kind of underrated them this year. They're pretty good. I was able to watch some of that. But it was a double-digit game, so click, I'm off of that. I'm going on to the next game. Get some Mountain West hoops in late night. It's like I said, there's some benefit in it, but man, I miss being in the gyms, and I miss, I wasn't able to go to the Nebraska UCLA game on Saturday. But I was right there, right on the couch watching the whole thing, and enjoyed that game, and a nice performance from Fred Hoiberg's team. A little bit different last night when they were at Carver Hawkeye.
So real quick before we move on to Iowa, is it structural and you're good, or like what?
Yeah, it's structural. We're good. We just got to get some of the pain under control. And, yeah, you got to be careful when you take those muscle relaxers because they'll put you to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what's interesting? I don't want to steal the little time we have with you talking about fitness, health, but you guys that like are so active, you're on the go, you're constantly carrying things, one shoulder versus the other shoulder, and your profession, it's amazing how many bad backs that there are for guys that are as good, like that do what you guys do at a high level. It's incredible.
Well, I appreciate you acknowledging that, and that is, I guess, one of the most overlooked things in local television is, yeah, we're running our own equipment and we're carrying all of it. Yep. And that's why, like a couple of years ago, when those little wagons that you see all the moms and dads bring up to the youth baseball games, they started to find their way into the local sports arena. It makes total sense because you can throw 4 or 5 bags in there, whether it's, the batteries or lights or whatever equipment that you need. It takes the strain off of the body. So it's actually a wise thing. It's when Nebraska goes on the road and you have to, hop in a plane, you can't take the wagon with you, and that changes things a little bit.
So, Kevin, not to make this all about your back, but I am curious. So as somebody who's had some back issues myself, was it hey, I just woke up and my back hurt, or did you do something? Because one makes you feel super old, and the other one, you're like, oh, no, I was active. It's okay.
I took a step and turned.
Oh, that's that's an old man injury.
I get it, man.
And
your wear and tear has to be incredible because you walk incredibly fast. Like it's weird. Like I'm not some stalker, but like I watch you work all the time, right? You're everywhere, so it's like your pace and the one shoulder. Sometimes I just want to say to myself, well, I hope he switches sides. You know what I mean? Like go left side, right side, because like you move.
Yeah. And we're moving fast, and even like on a high school football or basketball night, it is game to game. Rarely am I at one game for the entire time where you're just kind of standing in one spot or you're sitting in the stands at a certain location. We're like in and out of a vehicle, in and out of a gym or a ball field. And then, when it comes to, Nebraska football, we're running up and down.
I want you guys running down the sidelines with something heavy on just one side of your body, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the camera goes on the right shoulder. So, you better make sure the right side of your body is a little stronger than the left. No, but for the longest time on my Apple Watch, I had my steps record was the day Nebraska played at Oregon at Austin Stadium, whatever year that was, 2016, 2017. Mm-hmm. And the step count of that day was astronomical. I don't even know why that game was the game that set the standard. And then when the Huskers went to Ireland, I think that was the new PR for me in terms of steps. But there was a lot of sightseeing that went along with that game, not just covering the game there in Dublin.
Let me ask you something, Kevin, because and it's not. I know it's not like this in volleyball, but for the most part, when Nebraska plays Iowa, even baseball, quietly, there's this thing where Nebraska cannot close against Iowa. It's not cool to talk about school jinxes or the term jinx in general, but are you to the point now where you get this sentiment where when it's Iowa sports and it comes to this competitive endurance, why does it seem like it's always advantage Hawkeyes down the stretch against Nebraska?
It's a great question, and it's not just that one. It's not just always in Iowa City. It happens in Lincoln too. That's what's crazy. It's one thing if it's that's the border school and they've got the crowd charged up.
Women's basketball, just pick the sport.
Right. The only sport where it doesn't happen is volleyball because that program is at the bottom of the league and Nebraska is at the top of the league. But you get all the other sports where it's fairly similar. And I don't know if that's just sports, with air quotes around that. Sometimes those storylines just kind of happen and they're just embedded in the way certain matchups go. But it might just be one of those things where for whatever reason, it's Nebraska-Iowa, and the Hawkeyes tend to close. Nebraska tends to crumble in crunch time. And, man, the 15-point lead going away for Nebraska, that was pretty puzzling last night how that all happened. And as much as people want to bag on the officiating, because it was bad. Like, it was bad. But there are also some things from a schematic standpoint and execution standpoint Nebraska could have done to stem the tide, when Iowa went on the run.
We're talking with Kevin Sjuts from 10-11 News in Lincoln. Kevin, as you kind of look at this Nebraska team versus last year, obviously they struggled on the road a ton, especially to start the Big Ten season last year. Do you have any level of confidence that they'll be able to bounce back from this kind of early disappointing road loss to get things off to a little bit quicker start on the road in conference play this year?
I do, and I think it's because of Bryce Williams. They have a reliable, consistent scorer that finds so many different ways to, put the ball in the rim. Last year it was Casey, and Casey had good days, and he had some not so good days. I think Williams just is a little bit more consistent. The challenge with Nebraska is the loss last night, and what highlights the disappointment of the loss is, one, it was against Iowa. Two, it's in a stretch where Nebraska has 3 of 4 games on the road, and now they travel to Purdue in probably the toughest place to play, toughest road venue in the league, and that's on Sunday. Purdue is looking to try to climb their way back into this thing too. They've had some tough early season losses, but they are battle tested. So that's what's challenging for Nebraska is they're in a really difficult spot in the schedule. I do think in the long run they're going to be okay.
So I'm with you. So this is weird. I'm supposed to be the confident one, but I felt like looking at this next 4-game stretch, I was prepared to say Nebraska needs to go 2-2. But then I kind of hedged, and I was like, well, should we set expectations on the basketball team and this, that? Even though we would do it with any other sport. I'm with you though. It's not daunting, and I think Nebraska, the way that they play, and typically kind of how Iowa can stymie momentum after a momentous Nebraska basketball occasion. I think it's okay to say Nebraska should go 2-2 in these next 4. Like, is that nuts?
No. If they go 2-2, they're fine. If they go 1-3, they're fine. I just think that, and plus the other thing to mention beyond Bryce Williams and his consistency, Nebraska entering yesterday, they were 10th nationally in the KenPom in defensive efficiency. They're going to keep themselves in games, and they will probably win a few games that you're not going to think that they will win. And, they're going to maybe lose a few games that are going to possibly slip away. But if you win at home, which is what they proven last year and maybe even the year before that, if you win at home, you give yourself a chance. And in the Big Ten, as good as it is this year, and that's surprising, if you're in the middle of the league, you're probably making the tournament. And I think that that's probably realistic what Nebraska should be targeting right now.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts, 10-11 News in Lincoln. Kevin, hope that back heals up for you, and we will talk to you again soon.
One day at a time, baby.
Step by step. That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts, 10-11 News in Lincoln. Good stuff from Kevin, as always. That's the taking a wrong step and turning and then having your back seize up on you. That's a humbling moment.
Hey, my man is. I'm telling you,
he's fit. Like, he's in good shape.
He's fast.
Yeah. He's in good shape, so it can happen to any of us.
They need to make 2-shouldered cameras too.
I know. I think it's like a preference though, like when you're shooting.
No, I hear you.
That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. DB, I don't know about you, but when I think about the new year, sometimes that bucket list starts getting a little long, whether it's going on vacation, maybe you need to do some house renovations, whatever it is. Centris Federal Credit Union can help you out with making those goals a reality with a home equity loan or line of credit. You can leverage your home's equity to get funds you need at lower interest rates than many other options. Go to centrisfcu.org for more information. DB.
Ravi.
We were having a conversation off air, as we often do, after our conversation with BC about the running backs.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of funny, right? Because I hear a lot of people talking about the running backs. Mm-hmm. And I find myself in a very strange position. Because I've said over and over, the running back room is fine. Right? I'm not super high on it. I'm not super low on it. I think it's fine. But I find myself kind of defending the running back room because I hear a lot of people like, oh, man, they need to get a running back from the portal. Got to get a running back from the portal. And I don't really – do they need to get – I don't think they need to get a running back from the portal. I feel weird defending a position group that I keep saying is just fine.
It's funny, too, because, like, if I'm on the outside looking in, that. By the way, that's not bad self-awareness on your part.
Well, I appreciate that.
So props to you. We are actually baby steps. Because when I say it, it's like, oh, man, DB is just defending the running backs. When you say it, it's, oh, Ravi just hates the running back room.
And neither one of us are saying that.
Neither one of those things are true.
No.
So what I think is interesting is you're actually even though you have a supposition, mm-hmm. and it wasn't overly positive, it wasn't overly negative either. It was just like, I'm not in love with the running back.
Yeah, but it is fine.
And I'm like, you say that now.
Yeah.
So what I like is that you've actually you started out with a supposition, mm-hmm. and you've taken the time to actually evaluate it along the way.
Yeah.
Like you weren't married to it.
No.
Right? So, and it's funny that now you're the one saying, oh, the running back room's okay.
Yeah, I don't feel like they need help.
But it's not because I beat you over the head with it because I'm this homer.
No.
It's the running back situations. That's why I was laughing talking with Jock Slap. I can.
That's his name.
That's
his name.
What to tell him. we were joking about the running back situation in Pittsburgh with Harris and Warren, because I said, people are upset with Tomlin because he said he's willing to have not as positive, productive run plays for the sake of running because there's something that they want to accomplish.
Yeah, it feels like it's important for what they're trying to accomplish. From a toughness
standpoint versus the potential to turn the ball over. Same way that I feel, and I asked this to Vers last night on Big Red Wrap-Up, the running backs look better the second half of the year.
Agreed.
They just do.
Agreed.
And we'll give a lot of credit to Holgorsen, as we should, because of there's only a few pet run plays. And he's very good schematically understanding back-end coverage.
So go back for a second on the pet run plays, right? Why is that important? Because I think we talked about it, in in-season a lot.
But it was hard, right? I gave you the analogies between LP and I use high-end guys that were both very good at what they did, but were vastly different styles.
Amon needed a ton of reps.
Yeah,
feel good.
He needed to the more times he got to see something, the better he was going to be. And he showed that could be at a very high end.
And that's reps of a specific type of play, right?
LP, conversely, didn't need to look at
more natural runner,
but also couldn't do this, wouldn't be as good at doing the same thing over and over again because
he needs a little variety.
Right? So there's multiple ways to skin the cat and be effective. So the pet plays work, but I want to go back to something that Coach Holgorsen said. I got a chance to – I'm fascinated by him. I told you, his son kind of got the party started.
Yeah.
Right? He broke the ice, super good dude, really smart football guy. And he understands life too. So I was like, all in. Right? I'm Team Logan. So, I'm spending time with Coach Holgorsen. And he said something that I think is fascinating. Okay. We were talking about philosophy and paid tabs in his notebook. I'm thinking, how important is it? If you're talking to me and you talk to me about life, there's this section in my life I can talk about. If you're talking to me about competitive sports, there's this section I can talk about. If you're talking to me about overcoming failure, there's this section that I can talk about. If you're talking to me about dealing with success, there's this section that I can just through life experiences, right? So he has a very similar thing, except just a little bit bigger case log when it comes to football. So if he sees man-to-man or cover two or quarters, there's these sections that he can go to that he likes. So we're talking about all these different things that have helped in this evolution. Well, I can actually write down the plays, and I can speak the language, and I can now talk to guys where I can use shorthand, and it doesn't take as many words, and people know we're on the same page. So it's just naturally going to get better.
Right.
He goes, I don't know how good that's going to be, but it's going to be better than what you saw last week. And last week is going to be better than what you saw
the week before.
The week before.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, he's told no lies. But he said something that was so important that we did not lend any credence to.
What's that?
So I'm asking him about basically coaches and philosophy. And he stopped me, and we're sitting there, and he says, he goes, I need you to understand something. One of the things that I love about our staff right now is not only their work ethic, but how well they work together. He said, you have got to watch Coach Raiola and Coach Satterfield work together. He said, I've done this a long time. They have what I would call DB. He went DB, so it was disarming. A level of understanding on how to work well with each other. There's a reason that the tight ends in our offense are flourishing with the offensive line play, given how I want to run the football and how they're utilizing the passing game. Say that again. They work so well together and are on the same page. There's a reason that our tight ends are flourishing in the run game and in the passing game. Nobody would ever know that or think about that unless we said it, unless he told us that. We just assume, this is what we say as a fan base,
I can't believe they would pay Satterfield $1.2 million to coach tight ends. That is not a $1.2 million a job.
I'd be like, well, whether they adjust the salary or not, like why do we care?
What difference does it make?
We need to go get such and such and such and such in the portal because if Raiola wants to be.
We say all these things, but what we don't realize is actually what's happening right before our very eyes. Like we didn't even. It was just the bowl game, right? We didn't even really acknowledge how the game plan kind of unfolded. I'm not even going to say changed because I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what the exact game plan was. I'm just watching it.
It felt like it changed, but
right,
yeah,
became a big kid game.
Yeah,
right. We went from outside the numbers, getting vertical, winning one-on-ones against a true man, and they did it a couple of times.
Early.
Even his first pick was like vertical outside the numbers. They took the vertical shot to Lloyd outside the numbers,
and then as they understood what the conditions were
and the footing, it was like, oh,
we got to do something else.
Let's do this. He manipulated the run game. By formation, and motion.
Which, by the way, is a thing I love. That's one of my favorite things.
I used to watch people do it too. So there are a couple of really good offensive minds.
That's part of the reason I like Shanahan so much, by the way.
And there were two people that I watch at peak Millard North. If you wanted to move the ball running, you had to do some things because you knew you were going to get some zero coverage and you were going to get some man-to-man.
Yeah.
So I watched these coaches kind of study how to attack Millard North. And they didn't beat them over the top because they were playing man-to-man. They manipulated them in the run game. So I developed kind of this affinity for we think coverage just matters in passing game.
That's why I'm obsessed with Gus Malzahn, by the way.
So which is why I was patient with Coach Butler, Coach White, Coach Dvorak, and Coach Knighton at the time about the defense having to come along because I kept saying, listen, guys, it's hard
to marry coverages with the defensive line.
It's all Coach Quinn and I talk about.
It's the thing.
Listen, when it's not whether to play, two-man or chopper or whatever versus it's like, hey, if we want to do this, how are we going to fit in the run game in this odd front?
What was one of our biggest complaints about the defense this year? Gifford and Singleton fitting in the run game, right? Yeah. That has as much to do with coverage as anything else, right?
100%.
Right?
So when I'm listening to Coach Holgorsen talk about the recognition of being on the same page and being able to speak shorthand, you don't get the evolution of Lindemeyer and Borkacher and
Emmett Johnson
and Ramir Johnson and how Dowdell looked better down the stretch. And Fedoni's resurrection after a seemingly interesting 2-week period without all those guys being on the same page. And we're super indifferent about it. But it's because we have all these preconceived notions. Well, this guy isn't this and this guy. Watch them work together as they're getting better. Like, these guys are only going to get better the longer they work together. And you watch. There's a reason I've started seeing it better the last third of the season.
Yep.
It's not because all of a sudden he got better. He did a little bit.
Right.
But everything matters. That running back room is going to be just fine.
And that is how you can feel just okay about a running back room and feel just fine about the running back room.
With you.
Myron Medcalf coming up next from ESPN to talk a little college hoops.
We will be back. be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Gray with it up top to the right, low now. Bounces one inside. Cooper stole it, cutting in front. A chance to run all the way to the other end. A duck of a lifetime. 80 sound. My goodness.
73-43. 1.3 to go. Inbound for Tennessee, and that'll do it. History tonight at the O-Dome. Chop this one up for the Gators. 8th-ranked Florida beats number 1 Tennessee 73-43.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined by Myron Medcalf of ESPN. Myron, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Oh, good. Now, full disclosure, Myron, I'm listening to you fill in yesterday, and I'm a big ESPN. ESPN. We're local affiliate here. You have such range. You could talk about 50,000 different things. So I defer. I defer to the all-knowing. Where would you like to stay in your pantheon of sports knowledge? Because I would like to take you everywhere.
You give me far too much credit. I'm so bad at so many other things. I don't cook very well. Even as a kid, I couldn't paint in the lines. Like, they never put my artwork on the wall. You know, kids like, hey,
you're one of those right brain guys.
Junior's artwork. They hid mine. You know, like the parent-teacher conferences, they just like kept it away, so nobody could see it. So no, plenty of flaws on this end. I talk a lot, and I guess that's the way to make a career.
Hey, don't we know it? Myron, I gotta ask. Okay, so I know I'm following you along on Twitter and stuff, and I'm kind of checking out what games you're watching. So I know you saw that Cooper Flag dunk in the Duke game. Did you? Which dunk was better? I'm gonna throw you a couple different ones here. The Cooper Flag dunk for Duke, or the 40-year-old LeBron James turning back the clock there for a second on Lively?
Yeah, they were both special. I mean, better. I mean, I'm 41, so I'm always going to fend for the 40 and up crowd. I mean, I hurt my back looking at that dunk, and I wasn't even out there. Like that looked like I would need months and months to stretch to do anything close to that. And to see LeBron playing with 20-year-olds is just fascinating. So, I mean, that was pretty amazing. But I mean, what Cooper Flag did, like that's what we've known about Cooper Flag, what he can do. We've seen those highlights. And I think, college basketball kind of needed a moment like that because you're in the middle of the college football playoff, which is added games, obviously wild card weekend. It's easy to get lost right now. I mean, not even including the NBA and NHL. So you kind of have to shine in this crowded sports field right now with moments like that. So I thought it was incredible. What Cooper Flag did, fast break. I mean, he's going to be a phenomenal, I think, NBA player.
Myron, speaking of Cooper Flag, full disclosure, I was a little underwhelmed early. I know he was playing great defense, but it seemed like some of the rest of his game hadn't come along yet. That seems to certainly have changed over, I don't know, pick however many number of games where he seems to have taken that offensive game sort of to the next level. I know the dunk gets all the highlights, but it seems like he's been much more consistent on the offensive end of the floor in the last, I don't know, month or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think people forget, like, he's supposed to be getting ready for prom.
Yeah,
I mean,
high school
fair.
I mean, he legitimately turned. He was 17 up until last month. So I think just in general, there's a lot that comes with that, and some of the challenges. Getting used to not even on the court, off the court as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you come as number one prospect, you're that young, you're playing at Duke. It's just different. But I mean, I saw a bunch of those early games. I mean, I was there in Atlanta when they lost to Kentucky. I was in Vegas when they played Kansas. And although the highlights were what he didn't do at the end of those games, my goodness, if you watched him, you can see that this dude is different, that this dude is special. And I think now you're just seeing him kind of put it all together. Can he be a better three-point shooter in the future? Yeah, but I mean, the last 3 or 4 games, he's been great from the three-point line. So I think he's starting to put it all together, and that should scare the rest of America because that Duke defense is, I think, the best in the country, and I think they also may have the best player.
Talking with the great Myron Medcalf from ESPN. Myron, let me ask you about a team. It comes up a lot just because we're in Big Ten country here in basketball and kind of closet Pico fans. You could make the case with this young bunch. He's got 2 guys that are lottery picks potentially, and Ace Bailey potentially top 4 or 5. Haven't really seen it yet in its totality. But how much of this is mix, Myron, where Rutgers is off to the slow start? They couldn't get a stop against Wisconsin the other night when they needed it. And my partner said something, it's just interesting to watch Pico coach kind of this high-end talent. How much of that do you think is kind of a transition of, hey, these are some guys that I have to allow some freedom to versus I've done it a certain way for a long time. I have to adjust as a coach too.
It's probably both. I mean, like, here's the reality. When you see the most successful one and done throughout college basketball history, they've been surrounded by good players and veteran talent, So you can't look at Anthony Davis in 2012 and ignore some of the veterans that he had around him, right? You look at the most successful freshmen, and there was depth, and I just don't think Rutgers has that. I also think when you talk about Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, you're talking about 2 different players.
Very much so.
Ace Bailey, who again, I went to Vegas, saw him a bunch there. He's a month away from being a month away. I think just in terms of his body, he's. I mean, I saw a game in Vegas where I thought, my goodness, this is some of the best mid-range stuff I've ever seen. But the consistency element is always going to be the challenge for a young freshman whose body just isn't ready yet. Whereas I think Dylan Harper could play with the Bucks tomorrow and get 11 points, 5 assists, right? So, but I don't know how much there is to go with that. You need more depth. You need other players who can step up, who can help a team win. And I think Pike just doesn't have a lot of that depth. And you got to be good at something, and they're just not. I think that's why it's been so disappointing to have two potentially top 5 picks. I mean, last team that had, 2 top 5 picks or 2 top 3 picks, I think that was Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in 2012. They won a national championship. And this team is going to have to fight to even have a shot to get into the NCAA tournament.
And even then, we thought that the Twins, the backcourt, they were too old for that Kentucky team. So to go with your point about needing some help. So let me stay right there with this old thing, because I watched him last night, and I hated the fact that he couldn't get the foul, and then he got the technical, and then it got Texas kind of going late. But when you look at a guy like Johnny Broome and you look at maturity and kind of polished games as it relates to college, is a guy like Broome too old to be appreciated? Because I feel like for what he does, he's a stat sheet stuffer that shoots 56% from the floor, and he's an afterthought.
Yeah, I mean, his accountant appreciates him. He's getting a lot of NIL money. So, I mean, it depends on who you expect him to appreciate him. I think, this is a year where I think Johnny Broome has really stepped up, and a lot of people are seeing him. I mean, I think he's the front runner to win the Wooden Award. He's going to be, again, the face of the number 1 team in America, probably in the new polls. And I think his story is incredible. I mean, he was a mid-major guy who comes up and proves that he can play at this level. Now he's the anchor of the best offensive team in America and elite defense as well at Auburn. So, I think the NIL era is built for guys like that. What's his future at the next level? Who knows? There are a lot of guys like that. And maybe he's not seen as a pro. But at this level, you can be dominant, and I think the story will continue to be that it's better to be older than younger if you're trying to win college championships. If you're trying to market yourself as a team, that's the place to go if you want elite freshmen. It's just going to be hard to win against guys like this. So I think he's having a stellar year, and I do think the country is beginning to acknowledge how good he is.
Myron, you were talking about Auburn. Obviously, they were number 2 in the country. You had Florida lose their first game last week and then turn around and wax Tennessee, who was number 1 in the country. Have to imagine that won't be the case next week. Who have you seen this year that you think is, halfway through the season, the best team in the country?
First off, I'm worried about those Tennessee kids because Rick Barnes is the type to pull the bus over and make guys run the campus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how he's built. So, I don't know what those guys have been through the last 12 hours. But I think Tennessee, that's one of those burn the film games. I don't know what you do with that. It was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
But everything leading up to that was incredible. The defense was incredible. Chaz Lanier, Guy Ziegler. I think they have 2 All-Americans, one of the top offensive rebounding teams in America. They just didn't show up in Gainesville, and I don't know what that means. But I think, to me right now, Auburn and Duke are at the top, especially with just sort of the personnel edges they have. It's not just Cooper Flagg. I mean, Con Knipple and some of the other pieces they have. They're really becoming a team that no one will want to see. It's the best defensive team in America, top 10 offense, and they may have the best player in terms of talent in the country in Cooper Flagg. So, I mean, Duke is starting to put it all together. I think Houston is doing Houston stuff again.
There's 2 teams that I like. I told Ravi yesterday, I'm like, can you believe right now currently that Houston is top 15, not out of the top 10? They can beat anybody in the country.
Yeah, they lost a couple early games. I mean, the problem with November is that it sometimes creates a narrative that lasts until March. We're not very good at following teams along the way. So we kind of go, oh, man, team loses a couple games and we're kind of off the bandwagon. You saw that happen to UConn. I mean, you're seeing that happen to Houston. But, go back and look at their losses in hindsight. Okay, they lost to Auburn in the second game of the year by 5. Now we know Auburn's probably the best team in America. They lost to Alabama in overtime in Las Vegas, which is sort of a weird setup. I mean, I was there. There wasn't really a crowd. It was just kind of a different thing. And then they lost in Vegas again a few days later to San Diego State, also in overtime. So 2 overtime losses and a loss to the team that will be the number 1 squad in America next season. And by the way, they've won 7 in a row. So I think Houston is doing what Kelvin Sampson does. He just bulldozes everybody who's not a top-tier team. L.J. Cryer is starting to play like an All-American. So Houston's really dangerous. I think Iowa State is legit. And I think Florida showed a lot of people what they can do. In that matchup against Tennessee, like when those guards are rolling for the Gators, they're just really, really hard to stop.
It's just weird how those guys – I'm a diehard Carolina guy, and I watched that first half with Florida. Those guys, that backcourt can get to any spot on the floor they want to, and it's not necessarily just blow-bys. They're crafty, they play angles, and they're long. Like, Florida's a problem.
Yeah, they're tough, too. I mean, those guys are veterans. I did that game for ESPN. I was sideline reporter. I mean, they're really strong veteran dudes, and they're starting to come into their own. It's amazing we haven't mentioned Kansas. We haven't mentioned Connecticut, all these other teams that are usually in that conversation, even Kentucky. I think those teams are really good, but I think Duke, Auburn, Houston, and maybe Iowa State and Florida are starting to separate a little bit.
I got one for you.
Tennessee needs one more win. I mean, they'll bounce back. I mean, I'm not taking Tennessee out of that conversation.
I got one for you. And I get full disclosure, I'd rather be right than well-liked. So I was on these guys in the preseason. Their 40 minutes is almost as good as anybody's I've seen. What do you think about Illinois? Their best 40 minutes is incredible.
No, they're really good. I mean, compared to Jakasionis, I mean, it's going to be a lottery pick probably. You know, they lost that game to Tennessee, which you watched the game. That was their game. I mean, Rick Barnes runs a play from 1947 or whatever it was that he somehow remembered. Like, I don't know how he remembered the play, but he's like, yeah, I remembered this play that this guy told me in 1948. I'm like, Rick, how did you in the moment think of a play from 1948? But that's just Rick Barnes, man. Rick Barnes is amazing. So they lost that game. They lost in overtime to Northwestern, which you know those Illinois-Northwestern games are always tough. And then they got kind of blitzed a little bit by Alabama early in the season. But I think Illinois is really, really tough. And, again, I'd rather be getting good now than be really good in November.
Yeah.
November is always really deceptive in college basketball. But if you're starting to hit your stride right now, those are going to be the most dangerous teams in March, I think.
Okay, so let me give you one. And I understand the Big Ten. It's not recency bias because they hammered UCLA, because UCLA still can't develop skill. But can Michigan, are they built like for postseason, a 6-game run where you have to scout them with the two bigs and the high-low? Do you like Michigan going forward the way that roster is constructed? Because they appear to be really well coached.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple Michigan games this year. I love Michigan. I think, you know, the question early on was, will this work? You know, can you do, you know, with Vlad, Golden, and Danny Wolf, will that work? And I talked to those guys. Like, when Dusty May presented this to them, they were both like, what are you talking about? You know, they didn't buy in. You know, what's funny is people don't realize this. They can't run this in practice. So, like, Danny and Vlad are on opposite teams when they're going up against each other, because if they just put them on the same team, it doesn't work for them to kind of understand the opposing squads that they'll play. So they don't do a lot of this in practice. So teams usually see it in games, but even they're still learning on the court. But if you look at what they've done so far, it certainly works. That weird Wake Forest loss, which doesn't make a sense early in the game, but again, they're still figuring it out at that time in November. Then you lose to Arkansas.
They didn't take good care of the basketball either, which I kind of worry about their ball handling a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, that can be an issue, but you also got to deal with 2 7-footers in a collegiate game, and most teams aren't built for that. Well, I will say with Arkansas and Oklahoma, those losses, you had good guard play down the stretch. So I do think that is where, can they guard teams with elite guards if they keep getting caught in situations where they got to switch and end up on a quicker guy? I mean, that's going to be what teams try to do, but guess what? Only 3 teams have managed to find a way to win against a Michigan team that, to me, can win the Big Ten. And if those 2 bigs stay healthy, who wants to see that in March? That's not something that you can prepare for. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. It's like, what do you do in practice to simulate 2 7-footers who run that high-low action that they do? It's not possible.
Until the end, I typically don't believe in good losses. This is just the former player in me, but I thought Georgetown had a good loss last night at Marquette because they put some teeth to the record. And I thought St. John had a good win on the road as a toss-up game at Xavier. When you look at the Big East, let's take UConn out of it. If you're playing the long game this season, would you rather be St. John or Georgetown?
Well, I'd be afraid to say good loss to Ed Cooley. I don't know.
I know. He was not happy, but I didn't want to say anything negative. I mean, he had the sweater game going again, and listen, people love Ed Cooley around here because of the way Coach Mack feels about him. So he's probably like the favorite son that's not related to the family in Nebraska.
Yeah.
If that's Ed Cooley.
and I guess for Ed Cooley, I guarantee his message to his team was not, we almost won at Marquette. I think his message was, we blew a double.
Yeah, we wet the bed late.
Yeah. So, and I think that's it. That's what you need at Georgetown. And I'm a guy who came up on the Hoyas and, everything that Big John represented. They meant so much to the game. But I think Ed Cooley's trying to instill this idea of, like, that's the pedigree that we're coming from. So he's not going to celebrate that loss. I think they've been better than people have anticipated. But I think the difference with a team like this is good teams win those games. Like, good teams hold on to those leads. And I think Georgetown is trying to become that. I think they could be a dangerous kind of bubble team. But I'd rather be, St. John's. I think St. John's, if you look at their record, again, sometimes we just go wins and losses. And it's like they've got a double overtime loss to Baylor, right, by 1. They've got a loss to a Georgia team that team looks a lot better now than Kentucky.
If Georgia was ranked in the preseason, we would be thinking about them completely different.
In yesterday, people were like, oh, my goodness, I didn't know this was Georgia. Well, a lot of people did. They just haven't followed them until the Kentucky win. And then you go and you beat a Creighton team where everyone knows it's always so difficult to win in that building. I think that was the first game after the Pop Isaacs injury. But still, you're playing a tough team. So those are their only 3 losses. Creighton, Georgia, Baylor. And they have guys that no one's talking about. R.J. Lewis, it's starting to look like first team All Big East, maybe more.
He gets after
you have guys got Kaderi Richmond who haven't quite figured it out yet in a new place, but we know Pitino can coach. St. John's is, to me, could be dangerous in the postseason.
If you're Richmond, if you're KR, shot selection was kind of always the thing for him. You think you could reel that in this late in his career on a new team?
My theory on guys like him is there are like basketball players and there are hoopers, and he's a hooper. Like if you told me it was Saturday morning and I got to pick my 5, like Kaderi Richmond's on my team. We're not.
That's
leaving
how I feel about Cam
until
Jones.
They close the gym. Yeah, we're not leaving until they close the gym. Like get your 5, go get your uncles, cousins, whoever you want. We're not leaving. So I think he's that. But I also think the difficult thing with a dude like that is I don't know how you get him to turn that off when it's time to be a better basketball player. And I think Rick Pitino's working towards that. I think that's the goal because talent-wise, you're talking about a 6'6" dude who can do whatever he wants. And when you talk to coaches about Kaderi Richmond, they're like, yeah, man, it's all there. The question is, can he become a more efficient basketball player and not just kind of be always in hooper mode?
Myron, I got to ask you, we mentioned Georgia. They obviously knocked off Kentucky last night. And Kentucky is one of the most fascinating teams in the country to me because you've got, obviously, Mark Pope in his first year was obviously not their first choice to be head coach there. Gets off to a good start, has some really good wins, whether it's Gonzaga, Duke, obviously Florida's first loss there. But then they've got some kind of perplexing losses that one to Ohio State in particular. The Georgia one, not as bad, obviously. What are you doing with Kentucky at this point in the season?
The ceiling's high. What they did against Florida is, 106 points and just putting up numbers like that, 147 points per 100 possessions. That's your ceiling. You can run anybody off the floor. The challenge with those teams is when they're not good defensively, you can also get run off the floor yourself. So the question with Kentucky is, who are you when the threes aren't falling? Who are you in some of those rugged games like you had at Georgia? I talked to Mark Pope and sat down with him for a while before the season. And we were just kind of like talking back and forth. I said, you got any dogs? You know, and he admitted he's still trying to figure that out. I think that's something with a team like this is in those situations. I don't care what anybody says. You get down to the last 10 minutes of a close game on the road and shots aren't falling. You got one or two dudes who are going to change it, right? The good teams have that.
Mm-hmm.
The teams that struggle in those moments just don't. Like, you don't win by committee in those moments. And I think that's part of what Kentucky's figuring out. Who's your takeover dude? Like, who's your shot creator? Like, who's the guy who's going to put the team on his back and say, nah, we're not losing this. And I think when you play by committee, it can work and you can score 106 points. But there are also moments when it's just about basketball. Somebody's got to step up. And that hierarchy is something they haven't quite, I think, figured out yet in Kentucky. And I think that's hurt them in games like that. But overall, defensively, if you are a so-so defensive team, you're going to be in a lot of games like that going forward in the SEC.
I'm a big flying under the radar guy, and I'm just going to bring this back full circle because we only got you for about 60 seconds. You mentioned Iowa State, and we kind of roll our eyes. We're like, defensively, you know, can they score enough? But they do have one of the best players in the country that no one talks about in Lipsy in the backcourt. He's gotten better with his three-point shot. There's still a place in college basketball as a third-year guy like Lipsy. It's kind of more of the traditional role. Like, how good do you think, in the Pantheon when we talk about these guards in the backcourt?
I mean, you got to talk about Gilbert, too. I mean, TJ's recruiting winners. I don't know. I mean, that's all I would want as a coach. I think Lipsy is that, you know. And I don't know why people want more from Iowa State. Like, can they – like, you look at what Iowa State has done. I think people are just spoiled. Let me be honest. Because if you put Iowa State's resume in the last decade with a whole bunch of teams that would love to have a slice of that success, you would see how good you have it. But I think Gilbert and Lipsy can play with anybody. I think TJ is the real deal. I think he's coach of the year right now for me.
Yep.
They're playing top 10 offense, top 10 defense. Iowa State can win a national championship, especially in a year where I don't think you have like a overwhelming juggernaut that's unbeatable with 5 lottery picks.
That's Myron Medcalf, ESPN. Myron,
fantastic, my man.
Appreciate the time. That's great stuff. Hopefully we can catch up again with you soon.
All right, sounds good. I'm still going to learn how to draw and cook and all that other stuff.
Right brain, man. You're good. You're good.
They might not let me in the art class. All right, I'll see y'all.
All right. I can't cook either, man. No worries.
Would you take Richmond or Cam Jones?
Cam Jones.
Okay.
Richmond drives me crazy.
Cam is.
I know, but Richmond seems less controllable than Cam. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It's time for Bet On It.
Hi, Lincoln.
By War Horse.
How we doing, Lincoln?
Book. The city, not the person, not Riley.
Nah, although I'm not down on Lincoln.
You're not a hater?
No, not at all.
The city or?
I mean, Riley's fine, and I like Lincoln, the city.
He's all right.
I just was there last night.
You can go hang out at the casino in Lincoln or the one in Omaha. And if you would have gone there last night, you could have cashed in on DB's Florida bet.
Yeah.
That was
Let's start a streak.
Just cruising. That's about the easiest one. And then, to be fair, I got to have I'm a little War Horse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. I'm a little mad at Nebraska, okay?
Yeah.
Because I had them plus the 4.5.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're going to lose anyway,
don't tease you.
Just go ahead and miss that three-pointer in regulation so I get my cover, Juwan.
Yeah.
Or not Juwan, Bryce.
Do you know how many times that's happened?
A ton. It happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
I'm going to be honest. I have this theory that they should stop the bet at regulation.
So it's funny because me and my guy, and he is by far the longest standing relationship I've had with somebody, and I'm not even sure on his first name.
Okay.
We're going on years. So I say this loosely when I say my boy short side option.
Okay. I thought it was going to be Huskers X's and O's.
No, I told you his name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
So we were talking, and he's just fun. Like, you know, I never know, like, when he's paying attention, when he's not. Sometimes he just drops in, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about, he heard me talk about the total. And I'm like, does 161 surprise you? Remember that yesterday when I asked you about that deal?
Which, by the way,
and it
would have
came
been
down.
Would have been under.
So it came
in regulation.
It came down, and he said something funny, like over DM, and I was kind of laughing, and I hit with the fire emoji, and then it went to overtime, and he goes, "Scratch that, doesn't count," because he was right.
Was I. I said
in the theory, in his premise, he was right.
I was right too because I said 161. Man, that feels high.
Yeah, he's just.
Then I had Nebraska plus the 4.5. Both of which would have hit if my guy Bryce Williams doesn't go hero ball mode on me the last two possessions.
Bryce wanted a dub.
Well, he didn't get the dub anyway, so at least let me get the dubs.
Lane looks a little crooked this
right?
morning.
At least let me get the dubs on my bets.
Well, I smell bad.
If you're not going to play in overtime anyway,
you just
go ahead and shut that thing down early.
Yeah.
I had that thing all wrapped up on a tiny little bow.
It's crazy out here.
I'm just saying. I think we should.
Are you going to be all right? You seem very hurt right now.
I think we should start a petition that bets end at regulation unless it's a money line.
Not
You
happening.
seem very hurt right now.
Yeah, you do seem very hurt.
Unless
Right.
it's well, because listen,
You seem very hurt right now.
Here's the thing.
You
Vegas.
seem very hurt
You've
right
been pretty good. Like you're not like DB, but
No, but what I'm saying,
you have been.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
But I've thought this for a while though. This isn't just a Nebraska thing. I've thought this for a while that the bet should end at regulation unless it's a money line bet.
Not happening. Vegas will never do that.
I understand that, but Vegas isn't baking in overtime in those lines.
And I think Vegas has taken a bath this year.
Maybe.
I think favorites have covered at a prolific clip.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In college basketball?
Yeah. I think sports across the board.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
KP said longest basketball segment in the history of radio. We're just talking college hoops, KP.
Talking some college hoops, man. It's basketball season. I know everybody wants to talk transfer portal
He
and
had a
special teams coaches.
He had
It's
a
basketball season.
Angel Reese reference, but I couldn't bash.
That was funny.
But I couldn't bash my guy. He just had a bad night. But the Angel Reese thing was funny.
Yeah,
she drives me up.
He had a bad night, but that's exactly what it looked like.
Just knock it off.
It did. She's pumping those numbers up with the rebounding numbers because she, it's just like it looked. The what they call it, the Mikan drill, where you go from like one side of the hoop to the other.
Yeah.
She does that without making any of them. She just throws it off the backboard to herself from one side of the hoop to the other.
I'm not going to take the opportunity to hate on Angel Reese.
I'm not hating. That's the reality.
But I would say this.
Yeah.
Just take 60 seconds and say self-awareness.
Woosah.
Self-awareness. Self-awareness.
Like your wristband, self-awareness. Those are the last two letters.
This is my thing. You know how many consecutive days I've had this on since he sent it?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's
it's not stretching either.
It's grace, compassion. What's the second C?
The last one is self-awareness. So it's
G.
Grace, wisdom, compassion, courage,
self-awareness.
Yeah.
Need a little self-awareness sometimes. Like maybe if you're Juwan Gary, just be like, hey, I don't have a real good touch tonight. Maybe we just kick that bad boy out. Get the offensive rebound, reset the possession. Especially when you're up 15.
Nah, I get it.
And just like, maybe we run a little possession. Maybe try and get a better look. Because his were pretty close to the basket. It's not like those were super challenging shots. I know that they were contested. I know that there may have been some fouls that were not called. 5 for 21 is damn near inexplicable from that range. From where he was shooting the ball, that's almost inexplicable.
Would you say he dropped 3 percentage points after last night?
3.5. He was like 44.5 coming in. He's down to 41 even now.
Oh, in a one-game sample size.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. At halfway through the season, it's pretty hard to drop your field goal percentage 3.5 points in one day. That's a tough day at the office. Now, on the other hand, Sanford got his 3-point percentage up 2 points yesterday as well. So he can thank Nebraska for that. But
no, he can thank himself.
Yeah, he can thank Nebraska getting lost in transition a little bit. Like we're just not going to get out on shooters at all?
Nah.
No.
Just don't want to get out on shooters? Don't want to find guys in transition that are just lighting you on fire?
Just trailing the play in transition in general was a thing last night.
100%.
Yeah.
You know what used to drive? Like, I liked it because obviously I was rooting for Creighton. But if I was another coach, I would have lost my mind every time Ethan Rogge just trailed a play and had a wide open three at the top of the key.
Yeah.
That's easy.
I would like for you to be more like me, where you can be I clearly like Coach Mack more than you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still more objective. Like, I'm gonna need you to not come across as Creightonian.
Oh, I'm not gonna do that.
No.
Whoa. Listen.
Would you like to give that some thought?
Not even a little bit. DB, I like what I like. I'm not gonna.
That's funny. Oh, I'm not gonna do that.
I'm not gonna pretend that I don't like what I like.
No, you can I love Creighton, but I don't. It doesn't.
You heard it here first. DB loves Creighton.
No, I do.
I know you do. Big private school guy.
No. Well, actually, I'm.
Yeah, where's Steven been at? Well, actually, where are you at, buddy?
Probably working.
It's fine. He's always on here anyway. You think he just got a job?
No, he does. And I think he's been there for remember, he's 20 some years.
Yeah, he's a railroad man, isn't he? Yeah. I'm sure he's. We need you in the comments. Well, actually, what are we doing? Come on.
That's like my man Kevin.
We were talking about Steve Young earlier today. Steven Young needs to hop in the chat.
So I'm gonna. You can't like take the opportunity to like go all in on Nebraska basketball and not treat Creighton with the same vitriol.
Oh no, Creighton's bad. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, they're not bad.
Yeah, they're pretty bad right now.
But you're winning.
They're pretty bad right now.
When do they play again? Saturday?
Saturday, yeah. They have.
Like, what's wrong with the schedule?
I mean, can we bet on this? Can we bet on whether Fedor Zukic is ever going to play double-digit minutes in a game?
I told you, like talking to those guys, I think we overstated the value.
I think
our expectation level was off.
I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong.
But they're in the heart of it. Like they would know more than we would.
Sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. You know what I'm saying? That's a real thing that happens. That's a real thing that happens, and you know it. You get too close to a situation.
You're incredible.
Listen, I need somebody besides Jemiah Neal to be my second ball handler. Lovely man.
He gives you anxiety, doesn't he?
He seems like a lovely person. I don't know him.
We'll talk to you later.
I don't know him. Who was I talking to?
My mom.
Oh, probably, yeah. We love D. But like Jemiah Neal is a really nice ball player if he's allowed to do the things he's good at.
Yeah.
Being the second best ball handler on a team, not the thing that he's good at. Third or fourth? Sure. Why not?
Oh, shoot.
You're off. Like, you can't put you're not doing Stephen Ashworth any favors. You're not doing Ryan Kalkbrenner any favors by not having better offensive players on the floor. No, I watched the international tape, right? Yeah. I'm not making this up on rumors. I'm a dork. I like watching international basketball tape.
You got the dork part, right?
Like, I had a full scouting report on Radi Andronikashvili. All right? I did. I watched Fedor Zukic. That dude can play. He can get a bucket. He can relieve some of that pressure. At some point, I need you to get probably the third or fourth best player on your team on the freaking floor.
All right. Well, do you want the locks while we're trying?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to stay on this heater.
Heater.
Take your boys.
My boys?
The Neptunians. Nova.
Oh, get out of here.
Will beat Connecticut tonight.
Ooh.
Take Nova. And take Arkansas, laying the 3 at home against Ole Miss.
Nova and Arkansas, those are your locks from DB. That's Bet On It, brought to you by War.
2-0.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the La Vista location. There's two if you didn't know. Did you see what the deal is today, DB?
Yeah, I just looked at a happy hour.
Well, another one. It's Wing Wednesday.
Oh, I'm doing that. I did that a couple weeks ago.
Got the 12 wings for the $12.
Yeah, and I did the.
You love the wings here too, don't you?
Yeah, and I did the breading.
Yeah, the breading's good.
It's
got to get the breading.
Listen, it's sensational.
It is non-negotiable,
and it's in the top 3 wings in the city.
Yeah,
and I say that knowing that the other 2 that they're in the running with prepare their wings a different way.
Yes,
the other 2 are smoked.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only outside of my Pacific Rim spots.
Oh, okay.
Because they do an incredible fried wing.
There is an odd number of like Asian restaurants that have really good wings.
Yeah, I'll give you the 2 best if you'd like.
But yeah,
they're not paying me, so never.
We can do it off air.
Yeah,
yes, we'll do it later.
Yeah,
it's all right.
There's two spots that at Pacific Rim establishments. That do
you can say Asian. It's Asian cuisine.
That do them better than anybody.
Or Chinese. It's Chinese food. It's okay.
Say what you got to say, sucker.
It's okay to call food that. You know, unless they self-identify like South Korean Wyatt. You don't want to necessarily want to call people that. Like you probably shouldn't just walk around being like, yeah, Indian Ravi over here.
Well, did you see Asian Joe? Asian Joe chimed in yesterday.
Yeah, he self-identifies, so it's okay to repeat that.
Okay.
Like, unless you started calling yourself like Black DB, I'm not going to call you Black DB. Like, I'm not going to voluntarily be like, hey, it's
okay. I'm going to need you to stop it.
It's White Shane over there.
You're way.
That thing wet.
Dude, just casually drop Black DB as a hypothetical.
Well, it's like Black Adam, you know?
Now,
the ability to destroy a.
You're a big DC Comics guy, right?
I'm black and I'm hoping.
R.I.P. James Earl Jones.
How about my guy just catching up on the Wilt Chamberlain pod the other day?
I was just going to say, James Earl Jones went the way of Wilt Chamberlain recently, unfortunately.
Anywho.
Rest in peace, Darth Vader.
So I have to
You can say Asian restaurants was my point.
Yeah. So
Chinese.
I might do the 12 for 12.
It's a good deal. I like wings. I'm a big wings guy.
Yeah, you could get me 36 of them and still have about 4 cents to spare.
$4 to spare?
No, because of tax.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You want me to? I'll Venmo you today. You want me to?
No, I'm not shooting my shot on that one.
Shoot that on over.
No,
all right.
I'm gonna wait.
You just let me know. I've told you before. You could have doubled this thing up like 3 times already.
So which one did I pass on a couple months ago that I would have won?
Oh, I don't remember. It was
I took the deal or no deal. I took the safe, and I shouldn't have.
You did.
I have no idea.
I don't remember which one it was.
Me neither.
That's all right.
You need to go back yesterday if you want to believe in self-efficacy and speaking things into existence.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to Shafe's segment yesterday, which was like I was kind of
about Connor Segan,
just in general.
Oh, okay.
about Nebraska basketball and then go back and watch last night's game.
Well, it
was incredible.
It's kind of the same thing I said, right? I'm sitting there and I go, I think I know who they are. And you're like, oh, so you should be able to extrapolate. And I was like, except I don't trust it. Right? Yesterday was the epitome of
Because you wouldn't have pegged them for giving up 97.
Right. Because I think that's a good defensive team. I think they can score enough, right? And I think they generally do not wet the bed. But I don't totally trust, just, again, from the history, it's not even about this year's team. Just from watching too much Nebraska basketball, I have a little bit of hesitancy to trust them in situations like this. And last night was the epitome of the I don't totally trust it, right? I can't believe they couldn't figure out how to pick up Dix or Sanford in transition, right? Or how to make sure you get out to 23 feet instead of 20, right? Like I couldn't believe they couldn't make those adjustments real time because those are pretty simple things. Those aren't strategic. Those are effort, right? Like picking guys up in transition is not strategic. That's an effort thing. That's a concentration focus thing, right? Same thing with making sure you get out where you need to on certain guys on the perimeter. That's a concentration, effort, focus thing, not a strategic thing, right? Once Dix and Sanford get going, you have to make sure you get out on them. That's basic, like junior high stuff, right? That's a thing that I don't anticipate being a problem long-term for Nebraska, but it is something where I sit there and I go, when I say I don't trust them, that's what I'm talking about. I don't trust them just as a organization, not even like these individuals, to not have days like this. And listen, everybody does. I get that. But once you're up 15 in the second half, that's got to be a dub. 100% of the time. It has to be.
Yeah.
You can't, like, it can't go that way. It just can't.
How much of this has to do with the fact you want it to be 1-0 on Bet On It?
Well, I wanted to get it right for sure. But it also is just.
I'm totally joking.
But when
I'm still thinking about the whole black DB thing. I don't know if I'd ever call myself Black DB.
Well, that's why I said that's why I would never call you that.
But I do have a question, though. This is kind of random.
Okay.
Was Black Rob black?
Who's Black Rob?
Shane, was Black Rob black?
I don't know who Black Rob is.
I don't know.
I'm going to Google.
I would say
I never watched.
It appears he is. Yeah.
Okay.
That's Black Rob.
Well, maybe.
Oh, that's what he looks like?
I don't know. I Googled Black Rob. That's what I got. R.I.P., by the way.
Black Rob passed?
2021. I don't know who he is, so this could be all inaccurate information. I don't know how many Black Robs there are running around.
Oh.
But
I didn't know that.
I don't know if, like, Robert Dillingham goes by Black Rob. I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
Why Robert Dillingham?
It's the first Rob.
I'm just like.
It's the first Rob.
Like,
it's the first Rob I thought of. It's the first Rob I thought of.
Like, why creme brulee? Why?
You got White Shane over there. Got Indian Ravi. Got Black DB.
That thing wet.
I'm done. Shane, by the way, fantastic get on Myron Medcalf. And Husker X's and O's sent me a deal from Don Kleeman on Twitter where he was comparing C.J. Stroud to Bryce Young the last 10 games. So I tweeted it out. I'm like, hey, remember when I talked about C.J. Stroud yesterday and the evolution, and I was giving other quarterbacks the deal, and I was comparing like Kyler Murray to Love and narratives that are out there. My point on C.J. Stroud is not that I would necessarily take Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud. It's that C.J. Stroud is not who he has been or who we talk about him to be. That was my point, right? Like, we talk about C.J. Stroud as though
like he's already that guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about Jordan Love, though. The sample size isn't that different.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Which is why I brought up Kyler Murray versus Jordan Love.
Which is why I say, hey, switch spots and see who's like. I wonder if
Kyler Murray's like a 115 to 57 guy.
Yeah. That's why I'm really curious what it would look like if Kyler Murray
he's only like 6 months older than Love.
Went to a better spot. Like, what's it look like if Kyler Murray goes to a functional franchise? I'm genuinely curious because I'm not a huge Kyler Murray guy.
I know you talk. I told you he should have been, and I'm not. He's not going to get comeback player of the year.
No, but
what's his buckets is. But
he had a good year though.
He did have a good year,
and he's generally been good, like in throughout his NFL career. So I sit there and I go, okay, if I had to bet on a guy being good the next 5 years, and I put them everything else being equal, so I put them both with good organizations, good coaches, good OCs, whatever, right? Like, am I 100% sure I'm taking Jordan Love in that bet? Because I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure I take Jordan Love over Kyler Murray if everything else is equal. Jordan Love has been in a dramatically better situation his entire career. He got to sit. He got to learn. He's been with a functional organization. He's been with a good head coach. That's not been the case at any point for Kyler Murray. Like, that's where I have a really hard time. And I don't even love Kyler Murray, right? But, the example that C.J. Stroud reminds me of, he kind of reminds me of Trevor Lawrence early in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Where he had a good enough start that we go, oh, he's a guy now, because you assume it's linear. And C.J. Stroud's not there yet. He might still become that guy.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily want to get into the Stroud versus Young thing with the direct comparison. It's just statistically, man, we do give CJ the benefit of the doubt.
I think it's because we were stunned last year.
Quite a bit.
Like, we were really surprised by how good he was last year, right?
Can I also say that I was very happy with how Greer and McDaniel handled Tyreek Hill, the presser yesterday, because Greer's no nonsense.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can mess with that guy if you want to. But Tyreek's got to understand. Listen, you could have stayed with a winner.
Mm-hmm. You chose to come here.
You chose the money.
Yeah.
So don't cry.
Don't
cry.
You don't get to have both all the time.
No, don't cry.
Like, sometimes you're going to make choices.
Like, just grow up for a little bit.
Like, if you're going to go to the highest bidder, you're probably giving some things up.
Big Mike McDaniel guy.
Me too. Well, he's a 49er guy, so I like him. What?
Just toe the line and fall on over. Toe the line and fall on over.
What?
Just walk up to it. You don't have to go. It doesn't have to be a 49er thing.
Well, that's why I like him. He's also goofy. Like, I kind of like that he's different.
Yeah.
I like that he's wired a little bit differently than most NFL head coaches. You get a lot of the same personality types in those jobs. So it's nice to see a guy who's just kind of on his own little island out there doing whatever he wants.
Hey, Liquid, before we get out of here in the last 30 seconds, do you have a head coaching candidate you'd like to go to Vegas?
He told me Dion earlier.
I did not say that. I said that would suck.
I did not say that.
You kind of sound like Jaleel White there.
Quite.
If I could play the drop, you know what?
Did I do
We
that?
got two words for you.
that?
Suck it.
Wow.
So not Dion?
Yeah.
What if that means you get Shador too?
Yeah.
You don't want the Shador Dion
I
dream
told you
team
he's-
package?
The longer we do
He's
this,
gonna
the
go
more
there.
I wish you to drop the Joy Taylor joke. That's what I wish.
I don't even know what you're talking about. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will almost certainly be back tomorrow.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.